The debt. She couldn't pay. She signed her life away in black ink at 11:47 p.m. in a room that smelled like cigar smoke and money, with a man whose eyes didn't blink when she cried. Her father's debt was $3.2 million. Her price was a wedding ring. And the moment she wrote her name on that contract, Iris Hale understood something nobody had warned her about. The devil doesn't shout when he takes your soul. He just slides the pen across the table and waits. If you're watching this, please stay with me until the very end. Drop a like and tell me in the comments what city you're listening from. I want to see how far Iris's story has traveled tonight. The rain had been falling over Ashford Bay for 3 days straight, the kind of steady, bone-tired rain that didn't bother with thunder. It just came down, hour after hour, soaking the brick row houses of the East End until the gutters gave up and the streets turned black and glossy like somebody had poured ink on them. Iris Hale was walking home in that rain without an umbrella. She had one, technically. It was in her locker at the diner, which she had forgotten to grab because Marco the line cook had gotten into it with a customer again, and she'd spent the last 20 minutes of her shift untangling that mess instead of doing something smart, like remembering her own things. So now she was hoofing it 11 blocks in a soaked-through waitress uniform, the smell of bacon grease clinging to her hair, her shoes making a wet sucking sound every time she stepped. She was 24 years old. She had $38 in her checking account and a rent check due on Monday that she didn't have the full amount for. And she was still smiling a little because a trucker at table 6 had left her a $40 tip on a $12 breakfast, and people didn't do that for no reason. And it had felt, for about 6 minutes, like maybe the world was not entirely out to get her. Then she turned the corner onto Sycamore Street and saw the black SUV parked in front of her father's house. And she knew the way an animal knows that the $40 didn't matter anymore. No, she said out loud to nobody. No, no, no. She didn't run. That was the thing she would remember later, when she had time to turn this night over in her hands and look at the bruises on it. She didn't run. Some deep, stupid part of her thought that if she just walked up casually, like everything was fine, then everything would be fine. Like the SUV would turn out to belong to a neighbor. Like her father would be in the kitchen doing the crossword with his feet on the radiator, and she'd laugh at herself for being so paranoid. She was almost at the gate when the passenger door of the SUV opened and a man got out. He was tall. That was the first thing. Tall enough that he had to duck coming out of the car, and broad through the shoulders in a way that suggested he didn't spend a lot of time sitting at a desk. He wore a black overcoat, wet at the shoulders, and a black button-down underneath, and his face had the quiet blankness of a man who had stopped being surprised by things a long time ago. "Miss Hale," he said. Not a question. Iris stopped on the sidewalk. Rainwater ran down the back of her neck. "Who's asking?" "Your father's inside with my associate. He's fine. He'd like you to come in." "Who are you?" The man tilted his head slightly, considering her, like he was deciding how much to explain and how much to just get on with. Finally, he said, "My name is Matteo. I work for Mr. Varela. Your father borrowed some money from Mr. Varela a while back. There's a conversation that needs to happen, and it needs to happen tonight." The name hit her somewhere under the ribs. Everyone in Ashford Bay knew the name Varela. You knew it the same way you knew which bridges weren't safe to walk across after dark. Dominic Varela owned the nightclubs on Harbor Street, the construction firm that had put up half the new condos on the west side, the shipping company that ran boats out to the islands. And if you listened to the kind of people who talked about this in low voices over cheap beer, approximately 80% of everything that moved through the city that the police didn't want to know about. "My father doesn't know Dominic Varela," Iris heard herself say. Matteo didn't answer. He just held out one hand, palm up, in a gesture that meant after you. She went in. The front door wasn't locked. That, more than anything, is what made her stomach drop. Her father locked that door even when he was home. He'd been locking it since her mother left, 9 years ago. Like maybe if he was careful enough about the locks, nothing else would walk out. The house smelled like coffee and cigarette smoke that wasn't her father's brand. "Dad?" she called. "In here, baby," her father's voice from the kitchen. Too careful. Too even. He was using the voice he used to use on the phone with her mother toward the end, when they were pretending, for her sake, that everything was okay. She walked down the hall. Her father, Henry Hale, was sitting at the kitchen table in his old gray cardigan, the one with the hole in the elbow he refused to let her mend. He had his hands wrapped around a coffee mug that he wasn't drinking from. He looked small. That was what killed her. Her father was a big man, 6'1", barrel-chested, a retired long-haul trucker who had once, she remembered, lifted a washing machine off a dolly by himself. And right now, he looked like somebody had let half the air out of him. Across from him, leaning against the counter, was a second man in a black coat. Younger than Mateo, thinner, with a face like a nice butter knife. "Sit down, Miss Hale," the second man said. "I'd rather stand." "Sit down." She sat. Her father reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was cold. "Iris," he said. "Honey, I need you to stay calm, okay? I need you to listen." "What did you do?" Don't say it like that." "What did you do, Dad?" He closed his eyes. "It was after your mother left," he said. His voice was very quiet. "I got sick, you remember, the back thing. I couldn't drive for 8 months. The insurance stopped paying in November, and I had the mortgage, and I had your tuition, and I didn't... Dad, I went to a man at the port club. He said he knew somebody who did loans off the books. Quick, no questions. I thought I'd pay it back in a year." "How much?" He looked at her. "How much, Dad?" 3.2, he whispered. 3.2 what? Million. The word went through her like somebody had opened a window in winter. She felt her fingers go cold first, then her forearms, then a wide, cold space opening up in the middle of her chest where something used to be. "Dad, the interest kept. It kept. Dad, I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. I tried so hard. I tried." She pulled her hand out of his. She wasn't angry. She would be angry later, in waves, for years. But right now there was no room in her for anger. Right now there was just the math, the absurd cartoon math of the number he'd said, hanging in the air of their kitchen like a piñata nobody was going to hit. $3.2 million. Her father made $28,000 a year on his partial disability. She made about the same at the diner. Between the two of them, working until they dropped dead in their shoes, they could maybe, put together $60,000, $70,000 a year toward anything. It would take them 100 years to pay off $3.2 million, assuming the interest stopped, which it wouldn't, because the whole point of the kind of loan her father had taken was that the interest never stopped. She turned to the thin man at the counter. Her voice came out weirdly, very calm. "What happens now?" The thin man smiled a little, like he was pleased she'd asked the right question. "Mr. Varela would like to meet with you," he said. "Tonight." "Me? Not my father." "You." "Why?" He'd prefer to explain that himself. Iris looked at her father. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes. "Dad," she said, "look at me." He did. "Did you know they were going to want me?" His face broke. It was a slow break, the way ice breaks. A crack first, and then everything at once. He put his hands over his face, and he made a sound she had never heard him make before. Not even at her grandmother's funeral, not even the night her mother packed a single suitcase and got in a cab and didn't come back. "I didn't know what else to do," he said through his hands. "Iris, I swear, I didn't know what else to do." She sat there for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and put her hand flat on the top of his head, the way you'd soothe a child, and she said very gently, "It's okay, Dad. It's going to be okay." It was maybe the biggest lie she had ever told. She stood up. "All right," she said to the thin man at the counter. "Let's go meet him. Okay." The SUV took her east, out of the East End, past the harbor and the shuttered fish market, up into the hills where the old money of Ashford Bay had always kept its houses hidden behind gates and pine trees. She had never been up here before. The closest she'd come was a bus tour her high school had taken once, and even that had stopped at the foot of the hill, where there was a little plaque about some colonial governor. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass of the window and tried not to think. The man in the front passenger seat, Mateo, the tall one, glanced back at her in the side mirror. "You're taking this well," he said. "Is that a compliment or a warning?" He almost smiled. "Observation." "Yeah, well." She watched a line of rainwater snake down the outside of the window. I haven't started screaming yet. Give it a minute. Miss Hale. What? A piece of advice, if you'll take it from me. He turned halfway in his seat so she could see the side of his face. Mr. Varela is not a patient man with people who come to him angry or desperate. He is very patient with people who come to him calm. Whatever you're planning to say to him, think about it on the drive. I'm not planning to say anything. Then think about that too. She closed her eyes. She thought about her father's hand on the coffee mug. She thought about the rent check she wasn't going to be able to write on Monday, and about Mrs. Ortega at the diner who always saved her the last slice of tres leches on Fridays, and about the $40 tip still folded in her apron pocket in the washing machine of the SUV of the rest of her life. $3.2 million. You could not, she thought with a strange, almost giddy clarity, outwork that number. You could not outsave it. You could not outpray it or outcry it or outreason it. It was a wall, and she had just walked into it at full speed, and the only question left was how she was going to land on the other side. The SUV slowed. Gates, tall iron gates with a crest worked into them that she couldn't quite make out in the rain. They swung open without anyone speaking into an intercom. The driveway was long, lined with cypress trees, uplit from the ground. At the end of it, a house rose up out of the dark. Not a mansion in the gaudy sense, not columns and curlicues, but something low and wide and modern, all pale stone and glass, with warm yellow light behind every window. It was the kind of house that didn't look like it had been built. It looked like it had been negotiated for. The SUV stopped under a portico. Mateo opened her door. This way, Miss Hale. She stepped out into the clean, cold air of the hill. Inside, the house smelled like wood smoke and something green, rosemary maybe, or juniper. The floors were a dark, polished stone that her soaked diner shoes left tracks on. A woman in a gray dress and a small gold name tag met them in the foyer, didn't introduce herself, didn't look at Iris directly, and said only, "He's in the study." Mateo led her down a hall, past a living room the size of her entire apartment, past a dining table that could have seated 20, past a painting that she was fairly certain, even in her state, was a real Rothko, which meant that a single rectangle of red and orange on that wall was worth more money than her father had borrowed. Then a door. Mateo knocked once, didn't wait for an answer, pushed it open. "Mr. Varela," he said. "Miss Hale." And then he stepped aside, and Iris was looking at Dominic Varela for the first time. He was standing at a window with his back to her. That was the first impression. A man who didn't turn around when a door opened. It was such a specific kind of rudeness, so intentional, that for a second she wanted to laugh. He was tall, taller than Mateo. He wore a charcoal suit without a tie, the collar of his white shirt open at the throat, and his dark hair was cut short in the way men cut their hair when they have stopped caring about being handsome and have moved on to caring about being efficient. He was holding a glass of something amber in one hand. "Miss Hale," he said to the window. His voice was lower than she'd expected. Quiet, unhurried. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't know I had a choice." "You did. You still do." He turned. She registered this and then tried to stop registering it because it felt disloyal to her own situation. Not what she had imagined. She had imagined somebody older, somebody flashier, somebody with rings. Dominic Varela looked like he was maybe 34, 35. His face was narrow, clean-shaven, with a jaw that looked like it had been set in a fight once and never quite reset right. His eyes were a gray so pale they almost weren't a color at all. They did not blink while he looked at her. She straightened her spine. Her wet uniform stuck to her back. "You have my father's loan," she said. "Yes. $3.2 million. Closer to 3.6 with this month's interest. But yes. He can't pay it. I'm aware." "So what do you want from me?" Dominic Varela tilted his head slightly. "Not much. Just enough to suggest he was filing something about her away for later." "Sit down, Miss Hale." "I'd rather. Please sit down." She sat. The chair was leather and expensive, and it made a small, offended sound under her wet clothes. She kept her hands in her lap so he wouldn't see them shaking. He walked to the desk between them, a long, pale slab of wood with almost nothing on it. He set his drink down. He pulled out the chair opposite her and sat. And then he folded his hands together on the desk in the same way her seventh-grade principal had folded his hands before telling her she was being suspended for breaking Trevor Callahan's nose. "I'm going to be direct with you," Dominic said. "Your father took a loan from me 3 years ago. He has not made a full payment in 14 months. I have been more patient than I should have been because he was, at the time he borrowed, a friend of a man I respected. That man is dead now. The patience ended last week. So why am I here? Because I have a problem, Miss Hale, and your father's debt turns out to be an unexpected solution to it." "I don't understand." "You will." He stood, walked to a cabinet, and came back with a folder. He set it in front of her. He didn't open it. "In approximately 6 weeks," he said, "I need to be married." The rain sounded very loud against the window. "I'm sorry," Iris said. "What?" "I need to be married, publicly, to a woman who has no prior connection to my business and no criminal record of her own. The reasons for this are complicated, and I don't intend to explain them to you tonight. What I will tell you is that the marriage is a contractual arrangement. There will be no—" He paused, like he was looking for a word that wouldn't insult either of them. "No personal obligations on your part. You will live in this house. You will attend certain events at my side. You will sign an agreement that restricts who you may speak to, where you may go, and what you may say, for the duration of the contract, which is how long? 2 years minimum, renewable. And in exchange, your father's debt is erased entirely, paid in full the night you sign. He will never hear from anyone connected to me again. He will live out his life in that house on Sycamore Street, unbothered and unafraid." She stared at him. "You want me to marry you," she said slowly, "because you need a wife who won't embarrass you at parties." Something flickered in the corner of his mouth. It was almost a smile, except for his eyes, which stayed gray and flat as river stones. That is a reductive way to put it, but accurate. Accurate enough. "And if I say no?" He was quiet for a moment. "Miss Hale," he said, "I am not a good man. I would like us to begin this conversation and any future conversation we may ever have on that understanding. I am not going to threaten your father. I am not going to put a gun to his head and tell you he'll die unless you sign. That is not how I do business, and frankly, it would insult both of us. Okay, what I will do if you say no is call in the debt. Legally, through the holding companies the loan is technically owned by. Your father will lose his house by the end of the month. He will owe significantly more than he can ever earn. He will spend whatever remains of his life being hounded by collections, people who are, I assure you, far less courteous than I am. He will likely not survive it, not because anyone will hurt him, because he is a proud man, and shame is a kind of hurt that doesn't need a hand to swing it." She looked at him. He looked back. She had expected, coming up the hill, to feel hatred. That had been the only clear thing in her head during the drive. Hate him. Hate him with everything you've got, all the way through the door, all the way through whatever he says, because that's the only weapon you're bringing into this room. But sitting across from him now, what she felt was something colder and much more dangerous. She felt understood. He had done the math on her father the same way she had done the math on her father. He had arrived at the same conclusions. He wasn't lying to her. He was the first person in this entire nightmare, maybe including her own father, who wasn't lying to her. "Why me?" she said. He tilted his head again. "I beg your pardon? You could buy any woman in this city, actresses, models, girls who'd line up for a chance at a house like this. Why a waitress from the East End whose father owes you money?" "2 reasons." "Let me guess." "Please." "1," she held up a finger. It was steadier than she expected. "I come pre-compromised. I can't run to the press because the moment I do, my father is destroyed. You own my silence before I even sign anything." He didn't answer. 2. She held up another finger. "I'm nobody. No family anyone cares about. No ex-boyfriends with legal teams. No social media footprint worth a damn. I disappear into your house, and the world doesn't miss me, because the world didn't know I was here." Something moved in his face. It was brief. She almost missed it, but she had waited a lot of tables in her life, and she had learned to read men's faces the way other people read weather reports. And what she saw on Dominic Varela's face, for 1/2 of a second, was a small, startled something that looked almost like respect. "You're not wrong," he said. "I'm not going to apologize for being sharp. I wouldn't want you to. I have questions." "Ask them." "Do you expect me to sleep with you?" "No. Ever. Not as a condition of the contract. If at any point during the contract you wish to, on your own initiative, freely, that would be a separate conversation, but it is not required, and it will not be implied. The contract is explicit on this." "My father." "Taken care of, starting tonight." "Meaning what?" "Meaning that by tomorrow morning, the people he has been avoiding calls from for the last 14 months will be paid in full. He will not know it was you. I assume you'll prefer it that way." She swallowed. "Yes, I'd prefer that." "Then that is how it will be." "Can I leave the house?" "With escort, yes." "Can I work?" He paused. "That is unusual," he said, "but negotiable." "I want it in the contract." "Negotiable," he repeated, and this time there was something almost amused about it, some dry, reluctant flicker. "We'll see." She took a breath. "Why 6 weeks?" she said. "That is the one question I won't answer tonight." "Why?" "Because the answer involves people I do not yet trust you with. If you sign, we will have that conversation. If you don't need it." Fair enough, she thought. Disturbingly fair. She looked down at the folder on the desk. Her fingers, in her lap, had stopped shaking. She wasn't sure when that had happened. "Can I read it?" she said. "The contract. Before I sign." "I would insist that you do." "Out loud if I want?" "Every word." "And if there's anything in there I don't agree with, then we will sit here until 3 in the morning changing it, if that's what it takes. I would rather begin this arrangement with a woman who has read and understood what she is agreeing to than with one who signs because she is afraid of me." She looked up at him. "I am afraid of you," she said. "I know. Just so we're clear." "We're clear." He pushed the folder across the desk. She opened it. Okay. They were there until almost midnight. She read every page, twice, out loud for some of it, because it helped her think, and because she wanted to hear his voice answer her questions and watch his face while he did it. She made him change 3 clauses. She made him add 2. She asked him what the word indemnification meant, and he explained it without a trace of condescension, the way a man explains something to an equal who simply has not needed the word before. And that, more than anything else that happened in that room, was when she understood, with a clean, cold certainty, that she was going to sign. Not because she loved him. She did not love him. She barely knew him. Not because she wanted this life. She did not want this life. She was going to sign because he was the first man in her adult life who had sat across a table from her and treated her like she was capable of understanding a sentence that was longer than 6 words. She was going to sign because her father could not carry what he was carrying. She was going to sign because the alternative, walking back down that hill to the East End with the knowledge of what was coming for her father and being able to stop it and choosing not to, was a version of herself she could not live inside of. At 11:46, she turned to the last page. At 11:47, she picked up the pen. She looked at him one more time before she signed. "Dominic," she said. He lifted his eyes. "If you ever lie to me," she said, "in this house, about anything that matters, I will find a way to make you regret it. I don't know how yet, but I will figure it out." His face didn't move. "Understood, Miss Hale." "Iris." "Understood, Iris." She signed. The sound of the pen on the paper was very small. There should have been more noise, she thought. There should have been thunder, or a bell, or a door slamming somewhere deep in the house. There wasn't. There was just the dry little scratch of a ballpoint on cotton fiber paper, and the rain on the window, and the quiet breathing of the man who now, on paper, owned the next 2 years of her life. He didn't smile when she set the pen down. He simply reached across the desk and signed beneath her name. Then he closed the folder and he said, "Welcome home." She didn't answer. She was thinking about her father's face when he'd said, "I didn't know what else to do." She was thinking about the $40 tip in her apron pocket at the bottom of the diner's washing machine. She was thinking about her mother, who had walked out of a locked door 9 years ago, and about how she had spent every year since then promising herself she would never, ever put herself in a position where she did not control the lock. Well, she thought, so much for that. They put her in a bedroom on the east side of the house. It was bigger than her entire apartment. The bed was made up in white linen so crisp it looked like it had never been slept in. There was a bathroom attached, with a tub that stood on little clawed feet, and a walk-in closet that was empty except for a row of wooden hangers, waiting. A young woman in the same gray dress as the woman downstairs, different face, same dress, same averted eyes, set a folded set of pajamas on the foot of the bed. Soft cotton. Her size. She tried not to think about how they had known her size. "Mr. Varela says breakfast is at 8 if you want it," the young woman said to the floor. "Or you can have a tray brought up, whatever you prefer, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am." "Yes, ma'am." She closed the door. Iris stood alone in the middle of the room for a long time. Then she walked to the window. The rain had slowed to a mist. Down below, beyond the lawn, she could just barely see the iron gates, lit from inside the pillars, standing exactly where they had been when the SUV had driven her through them. She put her palm against the glass. She was not going to cry. She had decided this somewhere on the drive up, and she had renewed the decision 3 times during the contract reading, and she renewed it again now. She was not going to cry in this house, not on the first night, not where anyone could find evidence of it on her pillow in the morning. She would cry later, when she knew the shape of the place, when she knew which rooms had cameras and which ones didn't. She would cry efficiently, in places of her own choosing. For tonight she just stood at the window with her hand against the cold glass, and she whispered, so quietly that not even the rain could have caught it, Okay, we figure this out." She said it to herself like she was her own mother, and somewhere on the other side of the vast, quiet, beautiful house, down a hall she hadn't walked yet, in a study she had just left, Dominic Varela poured himself another inch of whiskey, looked at the contract with her name on it, and did not move for a very long time. He was not a man who believed in mistakes the way other men did. Mistakes, in his line of work, were a luxury you paid for with other people's lives, and he had paid enough of those bills to know that you never, ever made one on purpose. But he sat there with her signature in front of him and the empty glass in his hand and the rain starting up again outside, and for the first time in a long time, he had the uncomfortable, unfamiliar sense of a man who has just done something he is not sure he understands. He put the folder in the drawer. He locked the drawer. He turned out the light. Upstairs, Iris Hale climbed into a bed that was not hers, in a house that was not hers, with a name on a contract that, as of 11:47 that night, was no longer entirely hers either. She did not sleep. She lay there in the dark with her eyes open, and she listened to a house she did not know make the sounds a house makes in the rain, the small tick of cooling stone, the far-off shush of water in a pipe. Somewhere much farther away, a door closing once, and then quiet. And she began methodically to take inventory of the woman she was going to have to become in order to walk out of this, the other side of it. Not the woman who had gotten into the SUV, not the woman who had sat at her father's kitchen table and said it's going to be okay. Somebody new. Somebody sharper. Somebody who could live in a house like this without being eaten by it. She didn't know yet who that woman would be, but she was going to meet her, soon. She slept for maybe 40 minutes toward dawn, the kind of sleep that isn't rest so much as a short blackout. The body demands when the mind has finally run out of things to run through. When she woke up, gray light was coming through the tall windows and somebody was knocking very gently on her door. "Miss Hale? Iris? Mr. Varela has asked if you would join him for breakfast. 8 o'clock. I'm to tell you it's optional." Optional. She almost laughed. "What time is it now?" she called out, her voice rough. 7:12, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am." Yes, sorry." She lay on her back for another minute, staring up at a ceiling that was not her ceiling, and then she got up, because the only thing worse than being a stranger in a house like this was being a stranger lying down. The closet, which had been empty the night before, was not empty now. She stood in the doorway of it for a long moment, one hand braced against the frame. Somebody had come in while she was asleep. Somebody had walked into the room where she was lying with her eyes closed, carried in clothes she had not chosen, and hung them up in neat rows. Dresses, slacks, soft sweaters in the muted colors rich women wore, everything in her exact size, with the price tags already removed. There were shoes on a low shelf. There was a drawer of folded things she did not want to look at too closely yet. There was a silk robe, pale gray, hanging on a hook by the door. She closed the closet and stood with her back against it for a second, breathing. "Okay," she said out loud to the empty bedroom. "Okay, that's a thing that happened. Moving on." She showered fast because the idea of being naked and wet in that house for any longer than necessary made her skin crawl in a way she couldn't name. She put on a pair of black pants and a thin cream-colored sweater that fit her so well she could feel somebody's tape measure across her shoulders. She dried her hair as best she could with a towel. She did not put on makeup. She didn't have any to put on, and she wasn't going to start asking. The woman in the mirror did not look like her. The woman in the mirror looked like she belonged in a house like this. "Stop it," Iris told her. Then she went down to breakfast. The dining room was at the back of the house, overlooking a long, wet lawn that ran down to a line of dark pine trees. A small round table had been set by the window for two, with white plates and pale linen napkins, and a silver pot of coffee that was steaming in the gray morning light. Dominic was already seated. He had a newspaper folded beside his plate and was reading something on a tablet propped against a water glass. He was wearing a dark blue shirt this morning, no jacket, sleeves rolled once to the forearm. He looked like a man who had slept exactly as much as he had meant to. He glanced up when she came in. "Good morning." "Morning." She sat. A woman in the now familiar gray dress poured her coffee without being asked. Iris said thank you. The woman flinched, very slightly, as if thank you was an unusual sound in this room, and then left without a word. Dominic set the tablet aside. "I'd like to go over a few things with you, if that's all right. Housekeeping, as it were. I understand you didn't sleep much." "How do you know that?" "Your eyes." "Right." He didn't push. He just poured a little cream into his own cup, stirred once, and set the spoon down on the saucer with the sort of quiet precision she was beginning to recognize as his default. "Your father," he said. Her stomach clenched. "What about him?" At 6:40 this morning, a man named Arthur Vance showed up at the Hale residence with a certified check. "Your father has now been issued a paid-in-full letter from the holding company that technically owned the debt. Mr. Vance also delivered a small amount of cash, $3,000, in an unmarked envelope, with a note explaining that it was a refund of overpaid interest. Your father, as I understand it, sat on the kitchen floor and cried." She looked at him. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked to be kept out of it, and I want you to know that you have been. As far as your father is aware, a technicality in the original loan paperwork turned up in his favor. That's the story. No one will contradict it. He's going to think it was a miracle. Let him." She swallowed. The coffee was very hot. "Thank you," she said, and hated herself a little for the softness in her voice. She tried to put a frame around it. "I don't mean... I know you didn't do it for me. I know that. But thank you." He looked at her for a moment. It was not a warm look, but it was not a cold one either. It was measuring, as if she had just done something small he had not expected. "You're welcome. Can I call him?" A beat. "Not today." "Why?" "Because you are, as of last night, officially missing." She set the cup down too hard. Coffee slopped into the saucer. "What?" "Relax. Not missing in any sense that requires sirens. But you didn't go home last night, and the story we need to build, for the next several weeks, is one in which you and I met some months ago, quietly, and have been privately involved since. For that to hold, it cannot look like you vanished on a Tuesday evening and reappeared as my fiancé on a Wednesday morning. There needs to be a gap. There needs to be some deniability in how and when. So I don't call my father. So you don't call your father today. By the end of the week, when the engagement is public, you will call him. You will tell him you fell in love with a man faster than you meant to, that you're sorry you didn't tell him sooner, that you're sorry about the way you've been scarce lately. He will be angry, and then he will be relieved, because you will be happy. And because by then, of course, his debt has mysteriously resolved itself, and his grown daughter is grown, and he doesn't really have standing to demand explanations. You've thought this through. I've had 6 weeks to think it through, Iris. I just didn't have a name to put in the blank yet. She sat with that. That's ugly, she said finally. Yes. You're just going to say yes. What do you want me to say? That it's pretty? It's not pretty, it's necessary. I'd rather you know what it is than tell you something kinder that falls apart the first time you look at it. She thought about her father sitting on the kitchen floor. She thought about the $3,000 in the envelope and the story of the overpaid interest and the fact that for the rest of her father's life, he would remember this as the day a bureaucratic fluke had saved him, and not as the day his daughter had sold 2 years of her life to keep him alive. It was a kinder lie than the truth. She hated how much she was going to lean on that fact to sleep at night. "Okay," she said. "What else?" He reached down to a leather folio beside his chair and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He slid it across the table. It was a list, typed, numbered. "Rules of the house," he said. "Not all of them are mine. Some of them are security protocols I did not design and cannot change. I would ask you to read the entire list before we discuss any single item on it, because they make more sense together than separately." She read. 1. You will not leave the grounds without a driver and at least one security escort. This is not about control. This is about the fact that there are approximately 4 people in this region who would very much like to have a conversation with my wife, and none of those conversations would end well for you. 2. You will not use any phone, computer, or device that has not been cleared by our technical team. Your old phone is in this house. It has been powered down and will remain so. A new phone has been provided in the drawer of your nightstand. Its number is known to 3 people. 3. You will not speak to any journalist, podcaster, blogger, social media personality, or person you suspect of any affiliation with any of the above without clearing the contact with me first. If you're uncertain, assume the answer is no. 4. You will not enter the east wing of the house without me. This is not a test. It is not a fairy tale. There is nothing gothic behind that door. There are, however, files and equipment and ongoing conversations that, for your own safety, you should not have any knowledge of. 5. You will address staff by their first names. They will address you as Iris or as Mrs. Varela, depending on context. They will not call you ma'am. They have been told. 6. In public, you will take my arm. You will answer to my name. You will smile when smiling is warranted and not smile when it is not. If you are unsure, look at me. I will signal. 7. In private, you are my guest. This house is yours as much as it is mine for the duration of our contract. You have no obligation to me inside these walls that you did not agree to on paper. 8. If you are ever frightened of me, of anyone in my employ, of anyone who approaches you on the grounds or off them, you will tell me, immediately, without softening it. I would rather hear it 10 times when it was nothing than not hear it once when it mattered. She read the list twice. She looked up. "Number 5, she said. "Yes. You told the staff not to call me ma'am. I overheard you last night. I assumed it was a preference." "It is. It just surprised me that you noticed. I notice most things. It's not always a virtue." She set the paper down. Her hands, she noticed, were steady. "Number 4, she said. "Yes." "The East Wing." "Yes." "That one's going to be a problem for me." "I'm aware. I'm going to walk into it eventually. I'm telling you that now. I'm not saying it today. I'm not saying it this month. But I know myself, and I am going to walk into a door you told me not to walk into sooner or later, and I'd rather you know that going in, so we can skip the part where you're disappointed in me." The corner of his mouth moved. Again, that almost smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Noted. And number 8? "Yes. If I'm frightened of you, you want me to tell you?" "Yes." "That's a weird rule, Dominic. It's the most important one on the list." She looked at him for a long moment. "Okay," she said. He didn't ask if she had other questions. He seemed to know somehow that she had a lot of them and that most of them weren't ready yet. He just took the list back, folded it, and set it on the edge of the table between them like a small, tidy bridge. "There's one more thing." "What?" "My mother." She blinked. "You have a mother." "Everyone has a mother, Iris." "That's not—" "Yes, I have a mother. Her name is Elena. She lives in a house on the coast, about 90 minutes from here. She is 78 years old, and she has, as she will tell anyone who will sit still for it, approximately 6 months to live, an estimate she has been revising downward for the last 4 years out of, I think, a kind of black humor spite. She has been, for some time, very angry with me for not being married. Iris stared. That's why, she said slowly. The 6 weeks. Her birthday party, November 18th, a family gathering. She has informed me in writing that if I do not bring a wife to that party, she will be revising her will in ways I will regret. Your mother is blackmailing you into getting married. My mother is a woman who grew up in a particular kind of household and learned to use the tools that were available to her. I do not always agree with her methods, but I understand them. So I'm meeting your mother in 3 weeks on the coast at a small dinner first, not the party. I want her to know you before she has to perform knowing you in front of 300 other people. 300. Give or take. Dominic. Yes. I'm a waitress. You were a waitress. That's a fact about your past, not your future. And even if it weren't, my mother was the daughter of a fisherman. She married a man who owned 3 boats and, eventually, a fleet. She has never in her life looked down on a person for working with their hands. She will look down on you, if she looks down on you at all, for not being able to hold a fork correctly at a formal table, which, incidentally, we will practice. You're going to teach me which fork to use. Someone will. It will not be me. You will like her. She has no patience for nonsense, and she laughs like a man. Iris put her head in her hands for a second. This is insane, she said into her palms. Yes, you know this is insane. I know. She looked up at him through her fingers. Why are you telling me all of this at breakfast on my first morning? Because you asked me last night never to lie to you about anything that matters. My mother matters. The contract matters. The rules matter. I'd rather you know the shape of the thing now while you still have the emotional energy to be angry about it than 2 weeks in when it all comes at you at once. She let out a long breath. Okay? Okay? Okay. Keep going. What else do I need to know by lunch? He almost smiled again. This time it was closer to a real one, though it still did not quite get there. Eat something first. She looked down at her plate. She had not touched it. There was a small, perfect, soft-boiled egg sitting in a little silver cup, a piece of buttered toast cut on the diagonal, a sliced pear fanned out beside it like somebody had worried about the way a pear looked on a plate. She picked up the toast. Her hand, she noticed, was trembling a little. Not a lot. Just enough to make the butter catch the light. She ate it anyway. The first week she learned the house. Not the whole house. There were corridors she still had not opened, doors she had not touched, the east wing that sat at the end of one hall like a held breath, but the parts that were hers to know. The kitchen, where a small Filipino woman named Lourdes ran a tight and reasonable country and was the first person in the building to look Iris in the face when she spoke. The library, 2 stories of dark wood and cold light, where somebody, Dominic, she assumed had left a thin stack of books on a side table that turned out, when she looked closely, to include 2 novels she had mentioned liking during the contract negotiation, in the margins of a clause about free time. He had remembered. He had bought them. He had not said a word about it. It was the kind of gesture that cost a man like him nothing, and meant, she thought, more than he intended. She learned the mornings. Coffee at 7, in her room if she wanted it, in the sunroom at the back of the house if she didn't. Dominic left the house at 8 most days and was not seen again until dinner. He did not tell her where he went, and she did not ask. She did not want to know. She learned the staff. She learned their names. Lourdes, Marta, Celia, the tall, quiet one named Beatrice, who handled the upstairs and had an accent Iris couldn't quite place. And she learned, slowly, to ask them small questions that had small answers, and not be hurt when the answers came back clipped. They were not her friends. They were people with jobs. They had signed their own contracts, probably, and their contracts probably contained clauses about not growing attached to temporary wives. She learned the silence. The silence was the hardest. Her apartment in the East End had been loud. The pipes, the upstairs neighbor's dog, the bus stop on the corner, the kids playing half-court on the lot across the street, until somebody's mother shouted them inside. She had grown up inside noise. She had slept inside noise. Here, in the big pale house on the hill, there was no noise. There was the tick of expensive clocks, and the hum of a refrigerator she could not hear unless she stood next to it. There was the wind in the pines. There was, sometimes in the middle of the night, The distant murmur of a voice from somewhere deep in the house. Dominic on a phone call, she thought, though she could never be sure. The silence made her feel, for the first 3 nights, like she was going to claw her own skin off. On the 4th night, she took a blanket from the bed and went downstairs at 2 in the morning and sat on the floor of the sunroom with her back against the glass and listened to the rain and cried, finally, properly, with both hands over her face so nobody would hear. When she came back upstairs an hour later, there was a thermos of tea on the nightstand. She had not asked for it. She didn't ask about it in the morning. On the 7th day, she walked into his study without being invited. He was at his desk, on the phone, speaking in a language she did not know. Spanish? Italian? Something else. Smoother. And when she came in, he held up one finger, not rudely, just in a way that meant one moment, and finished his call. He set the phone down. Iris, I need a job. He leaned back in his chair. Good morning to you too. I'm serious, it's been a week. Dominic, I can't sit in this house for 2 years. I'll lose my mind. I'll start talking to the furniture. I know. I had something in the contract about working. You said it was negotiable. I'm negotiating. I see that. I'll clean houses. I don't care. I just need... Stop. She stopped. He stood up, walked around the desk, and leaned against the front of it. He folded his arms. The Children's Center, he said. What? St. Agnes, on 5th and Barrow. They run after-school programs for kids whose parents work nights. Homework help, reading, a hot meal. They are chronically short-staffed. They also have, as of a year ago, a private security arrangement that I happen to have paid for, which means I can put someone there without it looking strange, and without having to explain to them who you really are. She stared at him. You already thought about this. I started thinking about it the night you signed. Why? Because I pay attention. To what? You told me during the contract that you took the diner job because you liked being around people. You said you'd rather be tired and broke and around people than rested and comfortable and alone. I made a note of it. She didn't know what to do with her hands. That's not a creepy amount of paying attention, she said. That's a lot. If it bothers you, I can stop. No. No? No, I don't hate it. I just wasn't expecting it. All right. When can I start? Monday. If that's too soon, we push it. It's not too soon. All right. Dominic. Yes. Thank you. He looked at her for a long second. There was something in his face she had not seen there before, a kind of tiredness that had nothing to do with sleep. Don't thank me yet, he said. You might not like the escort I have to send with you. The escort was Matteo. He stood at the front door on Monday morning at 7:15 in a black jacket and a dark tie, holding 2 coffees, both of them in paper cups from a place she didn't recognize. He handed her one without a word. Cream, no sugar. I asked Lords. Good memory. Paid for it. She followed him out to the SUV. It was the same one that had driven her up the hill the night everything changed, and that small detail, climbing into the same back seat, but this time on her way out instead of in, did something to her chest that she did not entirely trust. She did not let Matteo see her face while it happened. The drive down into the city took 22 minutes. Rules, Matteo said, somewhere around minute 10, without looking at her in the mirror. You ready? Shoot. You don't go anywhere I don't go. If you need the bathroom, I check it first. If you need to step outside the building, you tell me, and I walk with you. If anybody I don't know tries to talk to you for more than 30 seconds, I step in. Not because you can't handle it, because that's my job. Okay? You don't tell anyone what your husband does for a living. I don't know what my husband does for a living. He almost smiled. Even better, keep it that way. Got it. One more thing. What? You're going to like some of these kids, Iris. You're going to like some of them a lot. And then one day you're going to hear a thing they said about their home life, or you're going to see a bruise you don't like the look of, and you're going to want to do something, fix something, call somebody. I need you to promise me that before you do any of that, you come to me first. Why? Because some of these kids have families, and some of those families have histories, and some of those histories touch the same part of this city that your husband touches. You go fixing things without checking, you could make somebody's life worse, not better, including yours. She watched the rain on the window. Okay, she said. Okay? Okay. I promise. He nodded once in the mirror. St. Agnes turned out to be a low brick building with a sagging green awning and a bulletin board just inside the front door that was covered 6 layers deep in kids' crayon drawings. A woman named Sister Marian met her in the front office and did not, Iris noticed with quiet relief, fuss over her. Sister Marian was maybe 60, a head shorter than Iris, with gray hair cut short and a cardigan with pencils stuck in both pockets. And she took one look at Iris and said, "You're Iris. I don't need your resume. Can you read out loud without making it sound like homework? I can try." "Good. I've got 9 kids in the reading room who have been waiting for a new face for 2 months. Go make them a new face." The first afternoon, she sat on a carpet square with 9 children between the ages of 7 and 10, and she read them a chapter of a book about a girl who found a door in her wall. And halfway through the chapter, a boy named Ezekiel, who had been the quietest one in the room, climbed into her lap without asking, and she did not move him, and she kept reading. And when the chapter was over and it was time for snack, she went into the little staff bathroom and sat on the toilet seat with the door locked and put her hands over her face and cried for exactly 90 seconds, which was all the time she was going to give it. Then she washed her face and went back out. When Matteo dropped her off at the house that night, Dominic was in the foyer, shrugging out of his coat. "How was it?" he said. "Good. Good. Good. That's all I get. That's all you get today. Ask me next week." He looked at her for a moment, then nodded and said, "Dinner's at 8. I'll be down." She climbed the stairs feeling, for the first time since she had walked into that kitchen on Sycamore Street, like a person who existed. The first strange thing happened on the 11th night. She came back from St. Agnes a little after 7. She went up to her room to change. She opened the door. She stopped. There was a rose on her pillow. Not in a vase, not arranged, just a single red rose, long-stemmed, laid across the white pillow like somebody had placed it there by hand. She stood in the doorway for a long moment. Then she backed out. She did not touch it. She walked down the hall, down the stairs, through the main hall, and she knocked on the door of Dominic's study. "Come." She opened the door. He was at his desk, reading something on the tablet. He looked up, saw her face, and set the tablet down. "What is it?" "Did you put a rose on my pillow?" He went still. Not the kind of still a person goes when they're thinking. The other kind. The kind that meant his whole body had just registered a problem. "No." "Dominic. Iris. I did not." "Okay. Wait here." He was already up, crossing the room, pulling a phone from his pocket. She heard him say something short and low into it in the other language. Matteo's name, a number, an address. He was back to her before she could count to 10. "Stay in this room. Do not go back upstairs. Do not touch anything in your bedroom. There are people on the way." "Dominic." "Iris, please." She stayed. It took Matteo and 2 men she did not know 40 minutes to clear the house. When Dominic finally came back to the study, his jaw was set in a hard, closed line she had not seen on him before. "Sit down," he said. She sat. The rose wasn't delivered. No one on staff put it there. Security has no footage of anyone entering that room today between 9 and 7, which means one of 2 things. Either somebody on my payroll put it there and then erased their trail, or somebody got into this house who wasn't supposed to be here, and they got in without tripping a single sensor, and they left without tripping a single sensor, and they chose your pillow. She swallowed. "Is there a third option?" "There is, but I'm not ready to say it yet." "Dominic." "Yes." "What does a rose on a pillow mean to you, to people like you?" He was quiet for a long time. "It means," he said finally, "that somebody wanted me to know they could reach you if they wanted to. It means they're not ready to do anything yet. They're just telling me what they could do." "Who?" "I don't know. I will. But tonight, I don't." "What do we do?" He looked at her. She had expected asking the question to see him put the mask back on. The cold, smooth mask he had worn in that same study 2 weeks ago, the night she signed. She had expected him to tell her it was fine. She had expected him to lie to her about mattering. Instead, he walked around the desk and stopped in front of her chair. He did not touch her. He did not sit. He just stood there, close enough that she could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw and the way his tie had loosened at some point during the last 40 minutes and never been fixed. "Iris," he said quietly, "I told you on your first night that if you were ever frightened, I wanted to hear it. I'm going to ask you something harder now. I'm going to ask you to trust me, just a little, for the next few days. Not all the way. I'm not asking for all the way. Just enough that when I say we need to change something, the car, the route, the hours, the people around you, you do it without arguing. I'll explain everything I can, but I need you to move when I say move." She looked up at him. She thought about the rose on the pillow. She thought about St. Agnes and the boy who had crawled into her lap. She thought about her father, who was at that moment 11 miles away in a small warm kitchen, drinking coffee and still believing a bureaucratic miracle had saved his life. She thought about the fact that whoever had laid that rose on her pillow had walked past all of it, past all of them, and chosen her. "Okay," she said. Her voice was steady. "I'll move when you say move. Thank you. But Dominic." "Yes. I need you to do something for me." "What?" "I need you to start teaching me things." "What kind of things?" She thought about it. "How to read a room," she said. "How to tell when somebody's lying to me. How to walk into a place like the one we went to tonight. The kind of place where there are cameras in every corner and everyone's got a job I don't understand, and not look like a waitress from the East End who just got dressed up." He was very still for a moment. "That's a lot to ask," he said. "You brought me into this house." "Yes." "Then teach me how to survive it." He looked at her. It was a long look, long enough that she started to feel the heat climb up her neck, long enough that she almost looked away, long enough that she understood, somewhere underneath the understanding, that this was the first time she had asked him for something he had not already thought of on his own. "All right," he said finally. "All right? All right. We start tomorrow." She stood up. Her legs felt a little hollow. She did not let it show. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet, Iris." "You keep saying that. I keep meaning it." She went to the door. She stopped with her hand on the handle. She did not turn around. "Dominic." "Yes." "That rose wasn't about you, was it?" He did not answer right away. "No," he said finally. "I don't think it was. Someone wanted me to see it." "Yes." "Why?" "That," he said, "is what we are going to find out." She opened the door and walked out into the hall, and she closed it behind her, and she did not go back upstairs. She went instead to the sunroom at the back of the house, and she sat on the floor with her back against the cold glass, and for a very long time she did not cry at all. She just sat there, listening to the rain on the windows of a house that a week ago had felt too quiet, and now, suddenly, felt like somewhere people were watching from, and she thought, with a clarity that was almost a relief, "Good, now I know what I'm in." And somewhere in the East Wing she had still not entered, behind a door she had promised him she would walk through eventually. A light came on that did not go off again for the rest of the night. The light in the East Wing stayed on until dawn, and Iris knew it because she watched it from her window for the better part of 3 hours before she finally lay down in her clothes and closed her eyes without any real intention of sleeping. She could see the faint yellow bar of it across the wet lawn, low and steady, like a lantern somebody had left burning in a church. At some point she must have drifted off, because the next thing she knew it was 6:41 in the morning and somebody was knocking on her door, and it wasn't one of the women in gray. "Iris, it's me." "Dominic." She sat up fast, pushing her hair out of her face. "Come in." He opened the door and stepped inside only as far as the threshold, which she would think about later and file away under things he did because he meant them. He was in the same dark blue shirt he had been wearing the night before. The cuffs still rolled, only now she could see the faint shadow of sleeplessness under his eyes, and a smudge of what might have been ink on the side of his hand. "I need you downstairs in 20 minutes, he said. "Dressed for the outside, flat shoes, nothing white." "Why?" "Because we're not staying here today." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere that has a wall around it and a name on the gate that isn't mine." "Dominic, I'll explain in the car." She didn't ask again. She got up, she washed her face, She pulled on jeans and a dark sweater and a pair of low boots that had appeared in her closet without her asking, and she was down in the foyer in 15 minutes, not 20, which she wanted him to notice. He noticed. Good. What's good about it? You listened. There was a different SUV this time. Dark gray, not black. A different driver, a man she had not seen before, with the calm face of somebody who had been picked for exactly that calm. Mateo was in the front passenger seat. Dominic got in the back beside her and shut the door, and the SUV moved before his seatbelt was buckled. They drove west, away from the city, on a road she had not been on before. Trees closed over it after the first few miles, and the rain from the night before had left everything lit up in that washed, silvery way the world sometimes gets in late morning. Nobody spoke for a while. She let them have their silence. She was starting to understand that silence, with Dominic, was not avoidance. Silence was him thinking, and she had decided at some point in the last 10 days that she would rather have his thinking than his rushing. Finally, somewhere past a turnoff marked only with a small green sign, he said, "The property we're going to belongs to a man named Cyril Okafor. He was an associate of my father's. He is 81 years old. He has lived alone in a farmhouse on 60 acres for the last 15 years, and he owes me absolutely nothing. He is also one of the only people in this region whose house I know, with absolute certainty, is not being watched." "Why aren't we staying at your house?" "Because until I know who put that rose on your pillow, my house is a place I can't promise you anything in." "And what are we going to do at Cyril's?" "We're going to start your training." She looked at him. "You were serious about that." "I told you I'd start today. I keep my word about things I say in studies at night. Most of the stupid things I've ever done, Iris, I did because I forgot to keep my word to myself. I'm trying not to make that mistake with you." Mateo, in the front seat, was looking at the road very deliberately. Iris turned to the window. "Okay," she said, "teach me." Cyril Okafor was a tall old black man in a flannel shirt and a pair of work boots so worn the leather had gone the color of old honey. He was waiting on the porch of a white farmhouse that looked like it had been built in 1912 and stubbornly refused to stop being useful. He had a mug of coffee in one hand and what looked like a small paperback book in the other. He did not stand up when the SUV pulled up. He just lifted the mug in greeting. "Dominic?" "Cyril." "This the wife?" "This is Iris." Cyril looked at her for a long moment. Not rudely, not kindly, just looked. The way a man looks at a horse he's being asked to train. "All right," he said. "Come on up." They sat around a kitchen table that had a crack in it mended with a thin strip of brass. Cyril poured her a cup of coffee without asking if she wanted one, slid a small plate of buttered bread across the table toward her and said, "Eat that. You're too thin. Dominic, sit." Dominic sat. Cyril leaned back in his chair. "Iris, tell me what your mama taught you about strangers." Iris blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Your mama. When you were little, what did she tell you about strangers? Don't take candy from them. Don't get in their cars." "What else?" Nothing else, I guess. That was the short version." He sipped his coffee. "That's where most people start. That's the first piece they ever get, and for most of them, it's the last piece, too. My grandmother taught me different. My grandmother told me, Cyril, the ones to worry about aren't the strangers. Strangers are easy. The ones to worry about are the people who act like they aren't strangers. Those are the ones you owe your attention to." He set the mug down. "Somebody walked into your bedroom last night and put a flower on your pillow," he said. "They did that because they wanted you to think of them as somebody you already know, somebody who belongs in your house. That's the oldest trick in the book. That's the trick that works, because by the time you realize the person isn't a stranger to the room, you've already stopped counting them." She looked at him. "What do I do about it?" "Start counting." "Counting what?" "Everything. Everyone. Every time you walk into a room from now on, I want you to do 3 things before you open your mouth. 1, who's here? 2, who was here? 3, who isn't here that should be. That's a lot." "It's exactly the right amount. You were a waitress, Dominic tells me." "Yes." "Then you already know how to do this. You don't think about it because you never named it. When you walk up to a table of 4, you already know before you say hello which one ordered the drink, which one is bored, which one is going to send the steak back, and which one is going to leave the tip. You do it in about a second and a half. Yes? Yes. That's the same skill. That's all it is. You already have it. What I'm going to teach you is how to turn it on in rooms where the stakes are different than whether somebody gets their ranch dressing. He smiled for the first time just a little. Dominic, he said, go somewhere else for 2 hours. She doesn't need you hovering. Dominic stood. Cyril. I know what she is to you. I'll take care of her. Go. He went. Montab. That was the first day. There would be 9 more, spread out over the next 3 weeks. Every other morning, always at Cyril's farmhouse, always with a different exercise and a different small piece of the world turned over so she could look at the underside of it. He taught her how to walk into a room and not look at the thing she actually wanted to see. He taught her how to listen for the breath a person took right before they lied to you, which was almost always a half beat longer than the breath they took before they told you the truth. He taught her how to hold her hands when she was scared so nobody could tell that she was. And he taught her, with the dry patience of a man who had been doing this since before she was born, that the most dangerous person in any room was almost never the loudest one and almost always the one who had chosen their chair carefully. Sit where you can see the door, he said, the third morning. Always. If there's more than one door, sit where you can see the one most people came in through. If someone tries to put you in a seat with your back to any door, stand up. You don't need a reason. You just stand up. Say you want to stretch. Say you're cold. Walk to the other side of the table. Anybody who argues with you about it is telling you something about themselves. What if it's rude? Iris, listen to me. He leaned forward on his elbows. A whole lot of what's going to keep you alive in the next 2 years is going to look, from the outside, like rude. You're going to have to decide fairly early that you are more interested in being alive than in being liked by people who would not care if you weren't. All right? All right. Say it back. I am more interested in being alive than in being liked. Again. I am more interested in being alive than in being liked. Good. Keep that one. She kept it. At the house, between Cyril's lessons, other things were shifting. Dominic was not lying to her about the rose. He was not dressing the situation up. He was not telling her, the way a lesser man might have, that she was safe, that it was nothing, that he had it handled. He was, instead, telling her the shape of what he didn't know, which was a harder and better thing. Somebody had gotten into the house. The staff had been re-vetted. 2 members of the security team, good men who had worked for Dominic for years, had been let go. Not because he thought they had done it, he told her, but because he couldn't be sure they hadn't, and he would rather insult 2 loyal men than bury a wife. He said the word wife like it was not quite a word he had chosen to use and not quite a word he could find his way around. She noticed. She filed it away. She was becoming, without meaning to, the kind of woman who filed things away. He started moving her around the house at night. Not obviously, nothing that would alarm the staff or let whoever was watching know that anything had been recalibrated. But the bedroom she slept in the 4th night was not the bedroom she had slept in the 2nd. The window she could see the east wing from had been closed off by a new set of heavy curtains she had not ordered. There were, for a week, at least 2 men on the grounds at all times who had not been there before, and Iris learned their names, Ezra and Park, and she learned which one of them smoked out past the gate on his breaks, and which one didn't, and she let them get used to her face. Cyril would have approved. On the 9th day after the rose, a small brown envelope appeared on the entry table in the foyer with her name on it. Just Iris. No last name, no address. It had not been mailed. There was no postmark. It had simply been placed there. She did not pick it up. She walked past it. She walked into Dominic's study. There's an envelope in the foyer. He was up before she had finished the sentence. It contained one photograph. The photograph was of Iris at St. Agnes 2 days earlier. She was sitting on the carpet square in the reading room. Ezekiel was in her lap. She was laughing at something one of the other children had said. Whoever had taken the picture had taken it from somewhere across the street, through a window, at a sharp angle. You could see the blurred frame of the window in the upper left corner. You could see the curve of Iris's cheek and the back of Ezekiel's small head very clearly. There was no note. There was no signature. There was nothing else in the envelope. Dominic stood over his desk for a long time, with the photograph in his hand and his other hand braced flat against the wood, and he did not speak. Then very quietly, he said a word in his other language that she did not know but could guess the shape of. Dominic. Not right now, Iris. Dominic, look at me. He looked at her. His face was not doing the thing it usually did. There was a muscle moving, slow and hard, at the corner of his jaw. His knuckles, on the desk, had gone almost white. This is not about me, she said, keeping her voice even, keeping her hands in front of her where he could see them, the way Cyril had taught her to keep her hands when she was talking to someone who might, without meaning to, break something nearby. This is about the kids. Whoever did this, they took a picture of a child. They put it in my house, with my name on it. They did that on purpose, Dominic, and I want to know what you're going to do about it. I am going to find them. When? Soon. That's not an answer. It's the best answer I have right now, Iris. Okay, then let me ask you a different question. Ask it. Does this have anything to do with your brother? He went still, the kind of still that had nothing to do with thinking. She had not planned to say it. She had been putting the pieces together for days, in a quiet way she had not shared with him, because she had been waiting to have enough of them before she opened her mouth. Matteo had mentioned once, in an offhand way during a drive, a man named Victor. Cyril had said, during one of the lessons, your husband's father had 2 sons, and only one of them learned the lessons the old man meant to teach. And he had not elaborated, and she had not asked. Celia, upstairs, had knocked over a small silver frame one morning while she was dusting, and Iris had seen, for a fraction of a second before Celia righted it, a photograph of 2 dark-haired boys standing on a dock, neither of them smiling. She had not asked about any of it. She was asking now. Dominic set the photograph face down on the desk. Sit down, Iris. I don't want to sit down. Please. She sat. He walked around the desk. He did not sit in his chair. He leaned back against the edge of the desk, on her side of it, and he folded his arms and he looked at her for a long moment before he spoke. Victor, he said quietly, is my brother. He is 4 years younger than me. We have not spoken in 11 years. The last time we were in the same room was at our father's funeral, and he did not attend the reception. He left through a side door, and I have not seen him since. Why? Because our father left the business to me. That's it? No. That is the polite version. The honest version is longer and uglier, and I don't want to tell it to you for the first time in an afternoon where somebody has just put a photograph of a child in our hallway. Dominic, Iris, I will tell you, I promise you I will tell you, but not right now. She looked at him. She thought about everything Cyril had taught her. She thought about the breath he had taken before the word uglier, which was a full beat longer than the breath he had taken before the word funeral. She thought about his hands, which were not where they usually were, which were not folded or flat. They were under his elbows, out of sight. She noticed. She decided to let him have this. Okay, she said, not right now. Thank you. But soon. Soon. And Dominic. Yes, if he is the one doing this, if your brother is the one who put a rose on my pillow and took a picture of a child in my lap through a window. Yes. Then I want to be part of how you handle it. He almost argued. She saw it in his face. He opened his mouth and he closed his mouth. And he looked at her the way a man looks at something he has just realized is heavier than he assumed. All right, he said. All right, I'll bring you in. Not all the way, not on day 1. But I'm not going to keep you in a room with the door locked while this happens. That is not what you and I are, Iris. What are we? The question came out before she had decided whether she wanted to ask it. He looked at her for a long, long time. I don't know yet, he said finally. She nodded. Okay, she said. Okay. I don't know either. We figure it out. We figure it out. That night, for the first time since she had signed the contract, he knocked on her door. She was reading in bed, a blanket pulled up over her knees. The lamp on the nightstand turned low. She had not been sleeping well, and she had decided that at least she could read badly instead of sleeping badly, which was not the same thing but was closer to it than staring at the ceiling. The knock was polite. 2 soft taps. "Iris, come in." He came in and stood just inside the door. He had not changed for bed. He was still in his shirt and his dark trousers, and he had a glass in one hand, half full of something amber, and he looked, for the first time since she had met him, unfinished. "I was going to drink this downstairs," he said, "and then I thought, that's going to make it worse. That's going to make me sit with it and turn it over and not sleep. And then I thought about coming up here, and I thought that might also be a mistake. And then I came up anyway. So, that's where I am." "Sit down," she said. He sat. Not on the bed. There was a small armchair by the window, and he sat in that. And he set the glass on the floor beside his foot, and he did not drink from it again the whole time he was in the room. They sat like that, not looking directly at each other, for a long time. "I'm not good at this," he said finally. "At what?" "At this. You, Iris. I'm not good at this. I didn't plan for you to be. I didn't plan for any of what you've been." "What have I been?" "Difficult, in a way I didn't think I'd like." She laughed, a small, surprised laugh. "Oh my God," she said. "Is that you being romantic?" "That is me being honest. Honest is better." "I thought about the rose all week," he said. "Every time I walked past your door, every time I heard you moving around in here. I kept thinking about the fact that somebody stood right where I'm sitting right now and laid a flower on a pillow where you sleep." "Dominic, let me finish." "Okay. I have a brother who has, for 11 years, been waiting for a way to hurt me that would actually land. My father taught us both how to hurt each other, and then he died before he could teach us how to stop. There are a lot of ways Victor could have come at me. He could have come at the business. He could have come at me directly. He could have hired people. He has done none of those things, which means he was waiting. He was waiting for there to be something that belonged to me that I could actually lose." She was quiet. "I brought you into this house, Iris." "I know." "I brought you into this house and I gave him a target. That is what happened. That is the true sentence about it. I told myself during the contract that I was solving a problem, and I was. I solved one problem, and I made another one, and the other one has your face on it, and she's eating toast in my kitchen and reading to a child named Ezekiel at a place where they can take pictures of her through a window." She set the book down. "Dominic." "Yes." "Come here." He looked at her. "Iris, It's not that. I'm not asking you for that. Just come here." He came. He sat on the edge of the bed, not quite close enough to touch. And he put his elbows on his knees and he put his face in his hands for a long moment. And she did not move. And she did not speak. And she did not try to fix him, which she understood from long experience with her father was the first instinct you had to fight when a grown man cracked open in front of you. After a while he sat up. He did not look at her. "I'm going to keep you alive," he said. "Okay, I mean that. Whatever that takes. Whatever that costs me with him. I'm going to keep you alive." "Okay. And I am going to find out who is on my staff who put that flower on your pillow. And I am going to make an example of them that nobody on my staff for the next 30 years will forget." "Dominic." "Yes. I believe you." He looked at her then. His face was very close. Not close in the way people meant when they wrote about it in books. Close in the way a face is close when a man is sitting on the edge of a bed in a house where the lights are low and he has not slept properly in a week. She did not reach for him. He did not reach for her. They sat like that for a long moment, and then he stood up, and he picked up his glass from the floor, and he went to the door. He stopped with his hand on the handle. "Iris." "Yes." "Thank you." "For what?" "For not making me say anything prettier than what I just said. A lot of people would have made me say something prettier." She almost smiled. "Pretty would have been a lie." "Yes." "Good night, Dominic." "Good night, Iris." He closed the door behind him. She turned out the lamp. She did not sleep. But she did not lie there panicking either. She lay there thinking, and what she thought about, mostly, was that at some point in the last 10 days she had stopped counting the days until the contract was over. She did not know exactly when it had happened. She did not like that she could not pinpoint it. Cyril would have been disappointed in her for not noticing the moment the clock changed. But the clock had changed. The trip to meet his mother came a week later. They flew east in a small plane that he owned, and she pretended not to be impressed by, and they landed on a strip of asphalt near the coast that was not an airport so much as a driveway with lights on it. A car was waiting. The road to Elena Varella's house ran along cliffs over dark water, and the water was the color of old silver where the sun hit it and the color of ink where it didn't. Dominic was quiet the whole drive. "You nervous?" she said finally. "No." "Liar." He looked at her. "Fine, a little." "About what?" "About her liking you. You told me she would." "I told you she wouldn't look down on you. That's not the same thing." "Dominic." "Yes, if your mother doesn't like me, we'll handle it. That is, I have learned in the last month that I can handle more things than I thought I could. Your mother is an old woman in a house on a cliff. I'm not afraid of an old woman in a house on a cliff." He smiled, a real one this time. Small, but real. "Don't tell her that." "I won't." The house was low and white with a tile roof the color of dried terracotta, and it sat at the end of a long gravel drive lined with lemon trees. Elena Varela was sitting in a wicker chair on the front porch, wrapped in a shawl despite the mild afternoon, and when the car pulled up, she did not stand. Dominic went up the steps first, leaned down, kissed her on both cheeks, and said something in the other language that made her laugh. A low, short laugh that was indeed, Iris registered with a small private pleasure, like the laugh of a man. Then Elena looked past him. "You?" "Me. Come here." Iris came up the steps. She stopped 2 feet from the old woman's chair. Elena Varela was small, fine-boned, with a face that had been beautiful once in a way that had refused to entirely leave her. Her eyes were almost black. They traveled over Iris, slowly, from her hair to her boots and back up again. "Turn," Elena said. Iris turned. "Your people," Elena said. "Where are they from?" "My mother's side, Irish. My father's side, Polish. A long time ago." "And you grew up where?" "The East End, Ashford Bay, Sycamore Street." "I know Sycamore Street. There was a bakery there 30 years ago. Kowalski. Is it still there?" "The grandson runs it now. He makes the same bread." Elena turned her head, just slightly, toward her son. "Dominic." "Yes, mother." "Go find Theodora. Tell her we will want tea in 10 minutes and that I want the lemon cake, not the almond. Then go for a walk." "I don't want to see you for 40 minutes." "Mother?" 40 minutes, Dominic. Go." He went. He looked on the way past Iris, like a man who had not been dismissed by his mother in 20 years and had forgotten how much he did not enjoy it. Iris caught his eye. He almost smiled. Elena watched him disappear around the corner of the house. Then she turned back to Iris. "Sit down, girl. Not there. Here. Closer." Iris sat. Elena studied her for a long, long moment. The shawl was the color of dark wine. There was a thin gold cross on a chain around her neck that Iris chose, deliberately, not to look at. "He signed a contract with you," Elena said. Iris went cold. Don't bother. I know my son. He does not bring women to this house. He has not brought a woman to this house in his adult life. The fact that he has brought you means one of two things. Either he has fallen in love with you, which, I'm sorry, girl, not because of you, but because of him. I do not believe he is currently capable of doing on the timeline you two would have required. Or there is a contract, yes? Iris looked at her. She thought about lying. She thought about it for maybe half a second. "Yes," she said. "There's a contract." Elena nodded, slowly, as if she had just had a small bet with herself confirmed. "All right," Elena said. "Then let us speak honestly. My son is a difficult man. He loved his father too much, and his father did not deserve it. And he has spent the last 15 years trying to become a version of that man that would have been worth loving, which is a thing you cannot do with a dead father, though nobody has yet been able to tell him that. Do you understand what I am saying?" "I think so. I am saying that he is not a good man, but he is not a lost one. And I have not, in a very long time, seen him look at a person the way he looked at you when he came up the steps just now, which was, how shall I say this, Like a man checking to see if the thing he brought is still in one piece. Iris swallowed. Mrs. Varela? Elena. Elena, I don't know what we are. I don't. I didn't expect. I thought I was coming here to sign a paper and serve 2 years and walk out. I don't know what this is yet. Of course you don't. You're young. Also, you have only known him for a month. Less. Elena smiled very faintly. Then you are ahead of schedule, girl. Most women it takes 6 months to understand that they do not know what they have. Iris laughed. It surprised her. Elena reached out. Her hand was small and cool. She took Iris's hand, turned it over, looked at the palm for a moment, and then closed her own fingers around Iris's wrist, gently, not like an inspection, like a small private thing a mother did. Listen to me, Elena said. When you go back to that house with him, when things get worse, because they are going to get worse, I have lived too long in this family not to know that they are going to get worse. I want you to remember something for me. Can you remember something for me, girl? Yes. My son has one brother. His name is Victor. He is beautiful, and he is broken, and he has been waiting for 11 years to do a thing he thinks is going to fix him. And it is not going to fix him, because nothing in this life ever fixes a man who has waited 11 years to be fixed. When Victor comes, and he will come, girl, I am not guessing, I know him. When Victor comes, you remember that my son is not his brother. You remember that Dominic has spent his whole life being told he is the same as Victor, and he is not the same as Victor, and the difference is a small thing, and it lives in a place very few people have ever been allowed to see. You tell him, when the time comes, that his mother said he is not his brother. Will you tell him that? Iris was not crying. She was very close. She was not. Yes, she said. I'll tell him. Good girl. Elena let go of her hand. Now, she said, tell me about the bakery on Sycamore Street. Tell me if the bread is still good. Be honest. I will know if you lie about bread. Iris laughed, and the laugh cracked halfway through, and Elena pretended politely not to notice. And by the time Dominic came back up the gravel drive, with his hands in his pockets 40 minutes later, the lemon cake was on the porch, and the tea was poured, and the two women were sitting with their heads close together over a story about a dog Iris had had when she was 6, and Elena was laughing the low man's laugh her son had warned her about, and Dominic stopped at the bottom of the porch steps for a moment and looked up at them without either of them noticing, and his face did a thing his face almost never did. He stood there long enough that Matteo, who had come around the side of the house to get him, had to say his name twice. They flew back on the small plane the next morning, and on the way home, Iris did not bring up what Elena had said to her on the porch. She was saving it. She had learned, in her month in that house, that some things a person said to you were meant to be used right away, and some things were meant to be kept in a pocket and brought out at the one moment they would do any good. She did not know yet what moment that was going to be for her. She knew only that it was coming. Dominic slept for most of the flight. Not a real sleep. The kind of sleep a man in his line of work manages on airplanes. Head tipped back against the seat, one hand still resting on his thigh, like it might need to move quickly, eyelashes not quite closed. She watched him for a while. She did not want to admit to herself that she was watching him. You're staring, he said without opening his eyes. I'm looking. There's a difference. What's the difference? When I stare, you feel it. When I look, you don't. He opened his eyes. I felt it. Then I was staring. What were you thinking about? She was quiet for a second. Your mother. His face softened, in a way his face almost never did. She liked you. I liked her. She doesn't like many people, Iris. I don't like many people either. That's probably why. They were silent for a while. The plane droned on. Somewhere below them, the coast was a thin gray-green ribbon, and the ocean was doing the thing the ocean does when you are too high up to see the waves. Dominic. Yes. When we get back, I want to see the east wing. He went still. Iris. I told you, on the first morning, I told you I was going to walk through that door eventually. I'm telling you now that it's time. Why now? Because your mother told me a thing about your brother that I'm not going to repeat yet, and I want to understand why she told me. Because I have been living in your house for 32 days and I still don't know what's on the other side of a door that takes up a third of my hallway. Because you told me during the contract that you wanted a wife who wouldn't embarrass you at parties, and I have stopped being that. I am becoming something else, and you know it, and I know it, and I think we are past the point where you get to keep rooms from me. He looked at her for a long moment. You sound like her. Like who? Like my mother. I'll take it. He almost smiled. All right, he said. When we land, we go through the door. They landed in the late afternoon, and the house, when they pulled through the gates, felt different in a way she could not have named if somebody had asked her to. It was not a thing she saw. It was a thing the back of her neck noticed. Cyril had told her, during one of the lessons, that her body would know things her brain had not caught up to yet, and that she should stop overruling her body when it tried to tell her things. She was trying. Matteo met them in this foyer. He did not speak. He just looked at Dominic, and something passed between them that Iris did not understand and did not try to. Give us an hour, Dominic said. But, boss, an hour, Matteo. Matteo stepped back. Dominic turned to her. Come with me. The east wing began at the end of a hallway Iris had walked past maybe 40 times in a month. There was nothing dramatic about the door. It was the same pale wood as the rest of the house, the same brushed nickel handle, the same quiet precision. It did not look locked. It did not look warded. It looked like every other door in every other part of the building, which was, she thought now, the most deliberate thing about it. Dominic put his hand on the handle. He did not open it immediately. There's nothing in here that's going to scare you, he said. Not in the way you're expecting. I want you to know that before we go in. No blood on any walls, no prisoners, no whatever you've been picturing. I haven't been picturing anything. Iris. Fine. I have been picturing everything. Open the door. He opened the door. It was a room. A long, low-ceilinged room that ran most of the length of the east wing, with windows down one side overlooking the dark line of the pines. There were 3 desks. There were screens, a lot of screens, showing what she recognized after a second as feeds from inside the house and around the grounds, feeds from the gates, feeds from what she thought might be the front of St. Agnes, though the angle was just off enough that she was not completely sure. There were 2 men she had never seen before at 2 of the desks. They looked up when Dominic and Iris came in. They did not stand. Dominic nodded once, and they went back to their screens. Along the far wall was a corkboard, and on the corkboard was her face. Pictures of her. Not many, maybe 6 or 7. The one from St. Agnes with Ezekiel. A grainy shot of her walking out of the diner on Sycamore Street from before any of this, from back when she had been a person who did not yet know what was coming. A picture of her mother, which she had not seen in 9 years, and which stopped her breath for a second. A picture of her father, sitting on the porch of the Sycamore house in his gray cardigan. And several pictures of a man she did not recognize, although recognition came anyway. The slow way recognition comes when a face reminds you of another face you know. He looked like Dominic, around the eyes mostly. The same gray. The same way of not blinking. But his mouth was wrong. Softer, almost pretty, in a way Dominic's mouth had never been. And his hair was longer, swept back, and there was something about the way he was standing in each of the pictures that suggested a man who had arranged himself to be photographed even when he was supposedly not aware of the camera. Victor. That's him, she said. That's him. The pictures of my mother. Iris, why? Dominic let out a long breath. Because when Victor started moving, he said, the first thing he did, before the rose, before the photograph of St. Agnes, before any of it, the first thing he did was send a man to find your mother. He didn't find her. She's been, as I understand it, off the map for some time. But the fact that he looked told us something. It told you what? It told us he was going after the people connected to you, not the people connected to me, which means he understood, before I did, what you were. What am I? A way in. She walked closer to the corkboard. Her fingers touched, very lightly, the edge of the picture of her father. She did not pick it up. She just touched it. When did you take this? She said. 2 weeks ago. Why? Because I wanted to know what he looked like now. Because you won't call him yet, and I thought I wanted to see him. To know. Dominic. Yes. That's a thing a boyfriend does. That's not a thing a contract husband does. He was quiet. I know, he said. She turned. One of the men at the desks was very pointedly not listening, with the kind of not listening that was worse than listening. Can we step out? She said. Yes. They ended up in the library because it was the closest room with a door that shut, and because there was something about the library, the smell of the old books, the high cold light from the windows, that made her able to breathe in a way she couldn't breathe in the room she had just left. She did not sit down. Dominic. Yes. Tell me about Victor. I told you I'd tell you. I told you I'd tell you when I could. Tell me now. He looked at her. Then he sat down. Not in a chair. On one of the low wooden steps of the library ladder that rolled along the back wall, so that he was lower than she was, which she registered without quite understanding why. Our father, he said, was not. I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm trying to make him sound worse than he was. He was worse than I am going to make him sound, and I am going to make him sound pretty bad. All right? All right. He built the business. From almost nothing. He was the youngest of 5 brothers. He came over on a boat when he was 6. He did everything. You're imagining a man like him would have done to get from there to here, and then some things you're probably not imagining. He was cruel to people who deserved it. He was also cruel to people who didn't. My mother used to take me and Victor down to the coast in the summers, to her father's house, to get us away from him for a few months at a time. That was the only reason we made it, I think, the summers. He paused. When we were teenagers, I was maybe 15, Victor was 11. Our father started picking, between us. He picked early. He picked me. I don't know exactly why, and I've spent a long time not asking. Maybe because I was older. Maybe because I looked more like him. Maybe just because a man like that has to pick, and he picked. From then on, everything in the house was arranged around the assumption that I was going to take it over, and that Victor was going to, whatever else. Finish school. Get a sensible job. Stay out of the way. And Victor knew. Victor knew from the beginning. And at first he didn't care. Victor was the one everybody loved, Iris. He was the charming one. He was the one the housekeeper's daughter had a crush on. He was the one who could make our mother laugh on a day she was too tired to laugh. He was the good one, for a while. For a while. Yes. What happened? He looked at his hands. When I was 23 and Victor was 19, our father did something to Victor that I didn't know about until years later. There was a girl Victor cared about. She was the daughter of a man our father wanted something from. Our father used her. He put pressure on her family through her, in a way that ended with her leaving the city without telling Victor why. Victor didn't find out for almost a year what had happened. When he did, he went to our father, and our father told him, I wasn't there. I am telling you secondhand what Victor later told a man who later told me. Our father told him that if Victor was going to be in this family, he was going to have to understand that the people he cared about were tools, not people. Tools. And that the sooner he accepted that, the less it would hurt to use them. Dominic, I'm not defending him. I know. But Victor took that conversation and he turned it into something. He decided, I think somewhere in his head, that if our father was going to treat people as tools, then the people our father loved were also tools. Which meant I was a tool. Which meant my mother was a tool. Which meant, and this is the part he said out loud eventually at the funeral, the business was a tool, and whoever had it was going to eventually be used by someone else. And the only way to not be used was to be the one using. He wanted the business, Iris. Not because he wanted to run it, because he wanted to be the one using, not the one being used. And your father left it to you. My father left it to me. And he left Victor. He left Victor enough money to live on for the rest of his life, and a house on the coast 3 towns over from my mother's, and a letter. I don't know what was in the letter. Victor burned it at the funeral, in the parking lot, in front of 3 people. Then he got in his car, and he drove away, And I have not spoken to him in 11 years, though of course he has spoken, in his way, at me. Over and over. Over and over how? Small things at first. A body in a container at one of our docks that wasn't supposed to be there. A fire in a warehouse I didn't own, but that I was publicly associated with. A rumor in certain circles that I was not my father's son. That one he let his people run with for almost a year before he let it die. All of it meant to, I don't know, to itch. To remind me he was there. To remind me that the business was not going to let me forget him, even when I wanted to. And now, Iris, I got married. For the first time in 11 years, I gave him something to aim at, that he actually wanted to hit. She sat down on the arm of a leather chair opposite him. She sat there for a long time. Your mother told me something, she said finally. I was wondering when you'd say so. You knew she told me something. I knew she told you something. She sent me away for 40 minutes. She didn't send me away so you could discuss the weather. What did she say? Iris thought about it. She said you are not your brother, she said. He closed his eyes. She said when the time came, and she knew the time was coming, I should tell you that your mother said you are not your brother. She said you had spent your whole life being told you were the same, and that you are not the same, and that the difference is a small thing, and it lives in a place very few people have ever been allowed to see. He did not answer. Dominic? Yes, she was right. You are not your brother. I have been living in this house for 32 days. I know the difference. Iris, don't. Don't tell me I don't know you yet. I didn't say I knew you. I said I knew the difference. He looked up at her. There was water in his eyes. Not a lot. Not enough to fall. But there, in a way she had not yet seen it be there, and she understood with a sudden, quiet, frightening clarity that she had just said something to him that nobody had ever said to him, and that he did not have, had never developed, any defense against it. They did not speak about it again that night. They ate dinner in the small dining room at the back of the house. Lord served them. Grilled fish, something green, a half bottle of wine that Dominic poured 2 small glasses from and then did not touch his. They talked deliberately about nothing important. Iris asked him about a painting in the hall. He told her the name of the painter and the year and the story of how his mother had bought it at a street market in her 20s for almost nothing, and how it had turned out, 15 years later, to be worth more than the house she had bought it to hang in. Iris laughed in the right place. He smiled in the right place. They were both pretending, carefully, that the library had not happened, and they were pretending it kindly for each other, and it was the closest thing to domestic that they had managed yet. After dinner, she went up to bed early. She was tired in a way she had not been tired in a long time. Not the tired of too little sleep, the tired of too much known. She was reading, the same book as before, a few pages further in, when the screaming started. It was not Dominic. That was the first thing her mind grabbed, out of some instinct she would later be ashamed of. It was not Dominic screaming. It was a woman's voice, low and ragged, and coming from somewhere down in the house, muffled by walls. There was a crash. There was a man shouting something she could not make out. There was a second crash, much louder, and the lights in her room flickered once, twice, and went out. She was on her feet before her brain had caught up. Cyril had taught her this. Cyril had taught her this exact thing on the 7th morning in his kitchen. When it goes dark, you don't run for the door. You don't freeze. You count. You count to 5. You listen. You figure out what just happened before you try to be anywhere else. She counted. By 3, her phone, the one from the nightstand, the one Dominic had given her, lit up with a single line of text. Under the bed, now. She went under the bed. It was a low bed with a deep skirt and not quite enough clearance, and she pressed herself flat against the rug, behind a ridge of boxes she had not known were there, and she held her phone against her chest with the screen face down so the light would not show. The bedroom door opened. 2 sets of footsteps. Heavy. Not careful. They were not expecting anyone under the bed. They were expecting a woman asleep in it. She's not here. Check the bathroom. The bathroom door opened, closed. Not here? A pause. He said she came up. She came up an hour ago. Then she's here somewhere. Closet. The closet door opened. A long silence, things falling. Not here. Shit, 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 shit. Go! Go now! He'll kill us! Go! The footsteps went. She lay there for another full minute before she moved. When she crawled out from under the bed, her knees were shaking so badly she couldn't stand for a second. She sat on the floor, her back against the side of the bed, and she made herself breathe. 4 in, 4 out. 4 in, 4 out. Cyril's count. The phone buzzed again. Stay where you are. Don't open the door for anyone but me. She texted back with shaking fingers. 2 men were in here. They're gone now. Looking for me. A pause. On my way. He was there in 90 seconds. He didn't knock. He opened the door with a key she hadn't known he had, and he came in with a gun in one hand held low against his thigh and Mateo 2 steps behind him, and when he saw her sitting on the floor, he went down on one knee in front of her, and he put his free hand on the side of her face for half a second, just half a second, and then he took it away like he had caught himself doing it. Are you hurt? No. Did they see you? No, I got under the bed. Jesus Christ, Iris. Cyril said, I know what Cyril said. I know. Good. Good girl. Can you walk? I can walk. Then we walk. Right now. What happened next, she would replay for years. Not in order, not cleanly, the way memory refuses to be clean about the moments that matter. They did not go down the main stairs. Dominic took her through a service corridor she had not known existed, behind a panel in the library she had never noticed, down a narrow flight of stairs that came out in the kitchen, past Lourdes, who was crouched behind the island with a cast-iron pan raised over her head, and who only dropped it when she saw who they were. Out through a side door into a garden she had never walked in, across wet grass, through a hedge, to a gate in the back wall that Dominic opened with a code she did not catch. Where are we? Service Road. There's a car. There was a car. Not the SUV. A smaller one. Anonymous. Dark. The kind of car nobody looked at twice. Mateo was already in the driver's seat. Dominic pushed her into the back and got in after her, and the car was moving before the door had finished closing. Dominic, what happened? He made his move. Victor? Victor. Or someone up for him. The traitor in my house finally used himself up tonight. He opened a door he shouldn't have been able to open. I had expected him to move by tomorrow. He moved tonight. Who screamed? I heard a woman scream. Beatrice. Is she... She's alive. She bought us the minute we needed. They hurt her. Not badly. She's going to be all right. Mateo had her out a side door before they found you. Oh, God. She's all right, Iris. I promise you. She is all right. They drove. She could not see where. It was dark, and the roads Mateo was taking were not main roads. And at some point, they left paved road entirely and bounced along what felt like a private dirt track for a long time, and then stopped. They were in the middle of nowhere. Literally nowhere. A flat scrub of grass under a sky that had, now that they were out from under the city, more stars than she had seen in her whole adult life. There was a single small house ahead, lit in one window, a low silhouette against the dark. Cyril was on the porch. He came down the steps without speaking. He took one look at her. He did not ask if she was all right. He took her by the shoulders, turned her, ran his hands once, quickly, professionally, down her arms and her back, checking for blood, checking for damage. Good, he said. Inside. Now. All 3 of you. Inside the little house, with the door locked and a second lock engaged that Iris had not noticed from outside, Dominic finally let himself breathe. He sat at Cyril's kitchen table with his elbows on the wood and his hands over his mouth, and for a long moment he just breathed, and nobody said anything to him, which was, she understood, a kindness. Cyril put a kettle on. Talk, Cyril said to nobody in particular. Mateo talked. In short, flat sentences. The traitor, a man named Raphael, who had been on Dominic's staff for 8 years, had opened a service gate at 10:47. 2 men had come through. A third had been waiting in a vehicle. They had been inside the house for less than 4 minutes before Beatrice had gotten to a panic button in the hallway upstairs, which is what had tripped the lights. Raphael was currently in the back of a second vehicle, Mateo said, and was going to be taken to a place he would be asked some questions in. Alive, Dominic said, without looking up. Alive. For now. Good. Cyril set a mug of tea in front of Iris. She had not asked for it. It was too hot to drink. She held it anyway because her hands needed something to do.
Iris, Cyril said. Yes. You did well tonight. I hid under a bed. Yes, you did. That's not doing well.
Girl? He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. Listen to me. Listen carefully. Most people, the first time something like this happens to them, they freeze. Or they run toward the door. Or they make a sound. You counted. You remembered the count. You went small. You stayed still. You let them leave. You're going to look back on tonight in a month and you are going to think you did nothing. You did the thing. You did the thing I taught you to do, and it worked. And you are sitting at my table because of it. Bullshit. She looked at him. She did not cry, exactly, but her face did a thing that was close to it. Cyril. Yes. Thank you. Drink your tea. She drank her tea. Dominic spoke to her much later when Matteo had gone out to the vehicle with Cyril and they were alone in the kitchen with only the ticking of an old clock over the stove. Iris? Yes. I need you to understand something. Okay. They weren't coming to kill you tonight. She looked at him. They were coming to take me. Yes, alive. He wants you alive. He wants you as a thing to put on a table. Piece of leverage, yes. To force you into what? A meeting? A conversation? He wants a conversation with me I have been refusing to have with him for 11 years, and he has decided that the only way he is going to get it is if he has something I cannot lose. Have you refused to have it because it's a trap? I have refused to have it because I do not know, when we are in the same room, what I am going to do to him. And I have been afraid for 11 years that what I am going to do to him is going to be the thing that makes me exactly what my father wanted me to be. And I am Iris. I am trying very hard not to be that. She looked at him across the kitchen table. She thought about everything Elena had said on the porch. She thought about the photograph of her father on the corkboard in the East Wing. She thought about the scream in the hallway and Beatrice and the two men looking under the skirt of a bed that was not quite the right bed. She thought about the fact that somewhere out there, a man who looked like Dominic around the eyes had been waiting for 11 years to aim at the one thing Dominic could actually lose, and had finally found that thing. And that thing was a 24-year-old waitress from Sycamore Street who had eaten toast in a kitchen and read a book to a 7-year-old named Ezekiel. She took a breath. Dominic. Yes. Have the meeting. He looked up. Iris. Have the meeting. Have it on your terms. Have it somewhere you pick. Have it with me there. No. Dominic. No, absolutely not. That is the exact thing he wants. That is the shape of the trap. He doesn't want a meeting with me. He wants a meeting where you are in the room so that when the moment comes, he can look at me and ask me to choose. Choose what? You or the business. Me or himself. You or something else. I don't know the exact sentence. I know the shape. It is a sentence in which I am asked to pick, in front of him, what matters to me. And then no matter what I pick, he takes the other thing. Dominic? Yes. Then let him ask. He stared at her. Iris? Let him ask. He has been waiting 11 years to ask you that question. He is going to ask you that question whether or not I agree to be in the room. If I am in the room, at least I get to hear your answer. If I am not in the room, you get to give an answer I will never be able to verify. And you and I, whatever we are, Dominic, whatever this is, we don't survive an answer I can't verify. You know that. I know you know that. He put his face in his hands. She reached across the table. She did not take his hands down. She put her hand flat on the top of his head, the way she had put her hand on her father's head that first night in the kitchen on Sycamore Street, and she said very quietly, Dominic, I am not going to let him make you into your father. He was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was the quietest she had ever heard it. All right, he said, we have the meeting. Outside, past the dark yard, Matteo and Cyril were speaking in low voices by the vehicle. The kettle was still faintly ticking as it cooled. Iris kept her hand on the top of Dominic's head until he lifted his face again, and when he did, his eyes were not wet anymore. They were something else, something she did not quite have a word for yet, but a word, she thought, if she lived through the next week, she might have one for by the end of it. They stayed at Cyril's for 3 days while Dominic's people put the house back together, and while a great many things happened in rooms Iris was not in, and was, for the first time since she had signed the contract, grateful not to be in. She slept on a narrow bed in a back room that had once belonged to Cyril's wife, who had died 9 years ago, and whose framed photograph on the dresser watched Iris each night with the patient expression of a woman who had seen worse weather than this. Cyril made her coffee in the mornings. He taught her, on the second day, how to load and unload a small handgun, not because he thought she was going to use one, but because, he said, knowing how a thing worked was the only way to stop being afraid of it. She was not a good shot. She did not need to be. Her hand stopped shaking on the second afternoon, which was what he had actually been trying to accomplish. Dominic left and came back, left and came back. He would not tell her where he went. She stopped asking. She understood, without anyone explaining it to her, that there were conversations he was having that she was not supposed to know the shape of, and that he was protecting her the only way he knew how, which was by keeping the blood a little farther from her hands than it was from his. She did not love that. She did not argue with it either. She had made a deal with herself at the kitchen table while her hand was still on the top of his head, and the deal was that she was going to pick her fights from now on. And this one, the one about whose hands had blood on them at the end of the week, was not going to be the fight. On the third night, he came back at dusk with Matteo and a man she had not met before. A short, serious man with white hair named Abner. They sat at Cyril's kitchen table with a map of a piece of coastline Iris did not recognize, and they laid out, for her, the shape of what they were proposing. Victor had agreed to a meeting. He had agreed faster than Dominic had expected, which Dominic said was the first thing that had told him the meeting was real. A man who had waited 11 years to corner his brother did not say yes in 48 hours unless he believed he was finally going to get what he had been waiting for, and he only believed that if he was bringing to the meeting something he thought was going to tip the table. What he's bringing, Abner said in his dry, careful voice, is 4 men, at least, possibly 6. Our count is 4 on the ground at the location, plus 2 in a second vehicle a half-mile up the road. He has arranged for what he thinks is surprise. He thinks we are bringing 2 people. We are bringing, if we include Cyril, which I would like to do, 9. He'll see 9, Iris said. He will not see 9. This is what Abner does, Iris. He does not do it by accident. If he says Victor will see 2, Victor will see 2. Okay. What Victor is going to try to do, Dominic said, is 3 things, in this order. First, he is going to try to make me emotional. He is going to say things about our father, about our mother, about the business, about you. He is going to push at every seam he can find. He has had 11 years to pick seams. He is good at it. Second, when he thinks I am emotional enough, he is going to reveal that he has something I did not expect him to have. That is the pivot. That is the thing that is supposed to scare me into agreeing to whatever he is going to ask for. I don't know yet what that thing is. I have guesses. None of them are good. Third, and this is the part you need to understand, Iris. Third, he is going to turn to you. To me. Yes. And do what? Ask you to choose, probably. Ask you to say in front of me whether you would rather leave with him or leave with me. He is not going to believe for a moment that you would choose him. He is going to ask because he wants me to hear the question. He wants me to hear you say it. He wants to watch my face while you say it. Dominic? Yes. I'm going to say something when he asks. Iris, I'm going to say something. I don't know yet what, but I am going to say something, and it is not going to be what he expects, and I need you to trust me to say it. Can you trust me to say it? He looked at her. Yes, he said, after a long time. Yes, I can trust you to say it. She nodded. Okay. Okay? Okay. Then we go. They went the next night to a private stretch of coast almost 2 hours north of the city. Dominic had chosen the location, and Victor had agreed to it, which had surprised no one, because Victor had wanted the meeting so badly that Dominic could have chosen the bottom of a lake, and Victor would have learned to breathe underwater. The place was the garden of a house that had not been lived in for 12 years. It had belonged, once, to a widow Cyril had known. A long white house with shuttered windows, a garden that ran down to a low stone wall, and beyond the wall, a drop of maybe 20 feet to dark water. The garden was overgrown but not wild. The widow had loved lavender, and the lavender had survived her, and the whole garden in the late summer smelled like an old woman's perfume over a faint metal tang of the sea. Iris wore black, a dark sweater, dark pants, soft boots that did not make a sound on gravel. No jewelry. Dominic had asked her to put her hair up, and she had done it, because for once his asking had felt like a real reason and not a rule. She had a small, flat thing tucked into the inside pocket of the jacket she was wearing over the sweater. Not the gun. She was not carrying a gun. She had not yet earned the right to carry one around men who might need to be shot. Something else. A small recording device Abner had given her at the kitchen table, no larger than a coin, adhesive on one side. She had stuck it to the inside of her bra, low against her ribs, where the weight of it would not move when she moved. Whatever he says, Abner had told her, we want it on record. Whatever he asks of Dominic, whatever threat he makes, whatever he says about anyone we have not yet identified. If he is going to spend 11 years preparing a speech, we might as well get the text of it. Okay? You will not tell Dominic it is there. Why?
But Sonnets.
Because if Dominic knows it is there, he will act differently when the conversation turns. Dominic is a man who cannot help, when he knows he is being recorded, trying slightly too hard to seem like the better man. The recording is better if he is just being the man. Abner, he will not be angry with you after. How do you know? Because I have known him for 31 years, and I know the shape of the things he forgives. She had stuck the device to her ribs. The moon was almost full over the water when they walked into the garden. Victor was already there. He was standing near a stone bird bath in the middle of the lavender, his hands in the pockets of a dark coat, and he watched them come up the path with an expression that was, Iris would think later, the exact shape of a man who has rehearsed a scene so many times in his head that the moment he actually gets to play it, he does not quite know what to do with his face. He was beautiful. Elena had said the word on the porch, and Iris, seeing him now for the first time in real life, understood what she had meant. He was beautiful in the way a very nice watch is beautiful. Every piece of him had been arranged. And underneath the arranging, the broken thing. Dominic, Victor said. Victor, you brought her. You asked me to. I'm surprised you did it. Don't be. Victor looked at Iris. He looked at her for a long moment, his head tilted just slightly. She met his eyes. She did not smile. She did not scowl. She did nothing that a man who had been rehearsing would have expected. She looked at him the way she had learned to look at customers at the diner when they had come in already angry about something that had nothing to do with her. You're not what I expected, Victor said. I hear that a lot. He smiled. It was a small, careful smile. You're going to be quiet now, aren't you? I haven't decided. Dominic has told you to be quiet. Dominic has told me nothing. That's a lie. Okay. She did not elaborate. Victor looked at Dominic. Something moved in his face. A small, annoyed thing. He had planned a conversation. She was not cooperating with the opening of it. All right, Victor said, turning back to Dominic. Let's start where I wanted to start. Dad's ring. Victor. Don't Victor me. You have Dad's ring. You have worn it every day for 11 years. You are not wearing it tonight. Did you take it off because of her? Because she doesn't know what it is. You hid it in a drawer for her. You didn't want her to see it. Dominic was quiet. You hid him from her, Dominic. You hid him. You put the ring in a drawer, and you signed a piece of paper with a waitress, and you thought you could build a life he didn't touch. And you thought I was going to let you. He's dead, Victor. He is not dead. Not in you. Not in me. Stop telling yourself he is dead. You wear his ring every day because he is not dead in you. I want the ring, Dominic. That's one thing I want tonight. I want that ring back. I am the one of us who understood him. I am the one of us who sees him for what he was. I want the ring, and I want the business. And I want you to say, in front of this woman, that our father was a great man and I was the only one of us who loved him correctly. It was such a small, specific thing to want, after 11 years, that for a moment Iris felt something she had not expected to feel for Victor Varela, which was a faint, cracked pity. You want me to lie to her? Dominic said. No, I want you to tell her the truth. The truth is that he was a cruel man and you loved him anyway, Victor. The truth is that neither of us were loved correctly by him, and the difference between you and me is only that I stopped waiting for him to do it, and you never did. That is the whole difference. That is it. You're a coward, Dominic. Maybe. You took his house. You took his business. You took his ring. And you spent 11 years telling yourself you were different from him. You are not different. You put a girl in his house and you made her sign a paper and you called it a marriage and you... Stop. Dominic's voice was not raised, but it was something. It was not his usual voice. Iris felt it in her sternum. Stop, Dominic said again. You don't talk about her. I think I do. No, you don't. You get to talk about him. You get to talk about me. You do not talk about her. Victor smiled again, a smaller, colder one. Well, he said, that's interesting. He looked at Iris. Here it came. She could feel it coming the way you feel a storm coming on a still afternoon in August, a shift in the air pressure, a change in the sound of the leaves. Iris, Victor said. Yes. Do you know what your husband is? I know enough. I doubt that. Let me tell you what he is. Your husband is a man who has, in the last 11 years, made a number of decisions that certain people who are not in this garden tonight, but who I have had conversations with, are very interested in. There are things he has done that he has not told you. There are names he has not mentioned. There is a night in a warehouse on Pier 16 about 4 years ago that he has not, I guarantee you, Iris, he has not described to you in any detail. Okay. Okay? Okay? That's all you have to say. I tell you the man you are married to has blood on his hands that he has not shown you, and you say okay. Victor. She kept her voice even. She kept her hands where he could see them. Cyril was proud of her somewhere in the dark. She could feel it. I knew what I was signing when I signed. I did not come into that house a tourist. I do not need you to tell me my husband is not a good man. He told me that himself the first night, in his study. He said, I am not a good man. I would like us to begin this conversation on that understanding. I have begun every conversation with him since on that understanding. You are telling me things I already know. Victor looked at her. There was a long moment where his face did something complicated. You love him, he said finally. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Victor. Yes. Ask your question. He blinked. What? Ask your question. The one you brought me here to ask. You wanted to watch him while I answered, so ask it. He stared at her. Dominic, beside her, did not move. He was absolutely still. Victor collected himself. She watched him do it. It took him maybe 3 seconds. He smiled again. It was thinner this time. All right, Iris. I'll ask it. If I told you, tonight, right now, in this garden, that I would walk out of here and never look at you again, that I would take my men and go, and I would leave you and your father and St. Agnes and your life alone forever, on one condition, if I said that, would you walk out of this garden with me instead of him? Would you come with me, right now, and leave him standing here with the moon and the water and everything he built, and let him know, for the rest of his life, that you chose me? Would you do that? She almost laughed. She did not, but it was close. No, she said. No, I'm not going to. Why? Because you're lying. Victor tilted his head. Am I? Yes. You have no intention of walking out of this garden and leaving my father and St. Agnes alone. You have spent 11 years building a thing out of your brother, and a thing that size doesn't get unbuilt because one woman gets in a car with you at a garden party. You would take me, and then you would find something else, and something else, and something else. That is how men like you work, Victor. I worked in a diner for 4 years. I know exactly how men like you work. I'm not done. He stopped. You asked me the wrong question, she said. You thought the question was whether I loved him enough to stay. That's not the question. I don't know yet if I love him. I think I might. I haven't decided yet, and frankly, Victor, after 32 days in his house and 1 kidnapping attempt, I think I have earned the right to take my time. The question is not whether I love him. The question is whether I recognize a man who is trying to trade me for his own pain, and I do. I recognize it very clearly. I grew up with a father who almost traded me for his own pain and at the last minute decided not to. I know what it looks like from both sides. So no, Victor, I am not going to walk out of this garden with you. Not because I love him, because I see you. Victor's face had gone very still. Dominic, beside her, made a small sound. It was not a word. It was a breath taken and not let out. Victor looked at his brother. You, he said very quietly, have no idea what you have. I know what I have. No, you don't. Victor. Yes. Walk away. I can't. I am telling you. Walk away. This is the last time I am going to say this to you. I have stood in the same rooms as our father too many times to not know what a man looks like when he is about to do something he cannot take back. And you look like that right now, and I am asking you. I'm asking you as your brother, Victor, not as the man who has the business. I am asking you to turn around and walk out of this garden and not come back. I do not want to do to you what he would have done. I don't. I am tired, Victor. I am so tired of carrying him. Walk away and I will not follow. I will not send anyone. You have my word. Victor looked at him. For a moment, just a moment, something in his face cracked. It was the smallest thing. A flicker. And in that flicker, Iris saw not the man who had been waiting 11 years to corner his brother, but a boy. A 19-year-old boy whose father had once told him that the people he cared about were tools, and who had never, in the 11 years since, been told by anyone that this was not a thing a good father said to his son. Then the flicker closed. No, Victor said. I can't. He lifted his hand. Iris saw the men come out of the dark at the edges of the garden a half-second before she heard them. 4 of them, 2 from behind the stone wall, 2 from the side of the White House. And she had time, exactly time, to draw one full breath and think very clearly. Here it is. This is the part Abner said, before Dominic's hand closed around her wrist and pulled her behind him. It happened very fast after that. She would not later be able to put the next 40 seconds in order. There was the sound of Mateo's voice from somewhere behind her, short and sharp. There was the sound of Cyril's voice from somewhere to her left, which she had not expected, because Cyril was supposed to be 100 yards up the road, which meant Cyril had come in closer than anyone had told him to, and she was going to be very cross with him when this was over. There was a shot. 1. From somewhere behind the low stone wall. And then there were many shots. Not from anyone on Dominic's side. Abner's people did not fire first, that was the whole point. But there was a sound like hail on a roof as the men in the shadows realized, all at once, that the 9 people who had not been there a second ago were there now, and that each of them had a light on them, and that the lights were red. Drop them, Abner said from somewhere. His voice did not rise. Drop them. All of you. Now. They dropped them. 4 men, in a half-circle around Victor, laid their weapons down in the lavender. Victor did not move. He was standing in the same spot he had been standing in when he said, I can't. His hands were still at his sides. There was something in his right hand that he had not drawn. Later, when the men picked it up out of the grass, it turned out to be a small silver ring, their father's ring. Mateo walked through the lavender to him and took his arm. Victor did not fight. He looked as Mateo turned him one last time at Dominic. You should have let him make me, Victor said. You should have let him. It would have been easier than this. I know, Victor. Dominic, go with Mateo. Victor went with Mateo. They took him out of the garden, and then they took his men out of the garden, and by the time the lights had finished sweeping the wall, Iris was sitting on the edge of the stone bird bath, because her knees had finally given out, and she had stopped being able to pretend they had not. Dominic was on the ground in front of her. He was on his knees in the lavender. He had not stood up since he had pulled her behind him. He was looking at her, and his face was not a face she had seen before on him, and he was not moving. Dominic, are you hurt? No. Are you? I'm not hurt, Dominic. I'm not hurt. Breathe, breathe, come on. He breathed. She reached down and took both his hands in both of hers. They were cold. His fingers were cold the way a person's fingers get when the body has pulled everything inward to take care of the heart. Dominic, look at me. He looked at her. I meant it, she said. What? I meant what I said to him, about seeing you, about you not being your father. I didn't just say it to get him off balance. I meant it. Iris, I'm not done. He stopped. I have been living in your house for 32 days. I came into that house because my father owed you money, and I thought I was going to die slowly in a gilded cage. That is what I thought. I want to be honest with you about that. I did not walk in loving you. I walked in afraid of you, and furious at my father, and sure I was going to spend 2 years holding my breath. And then somewhere, I don't know where, Dominic, I don't know the exact hour, I stopped holding my breath. You taught me to pick a chair I could see the door from. You taught me that. You brought me books I'd mentioned, and you didn't tell me you'd bought them. You took my father's debt, and you kept him from knowing it was me. You told me, on my first night, that if I was ever afraid of you, I was to tell you. You put that on a list. Nobody in my life has ever, in any list, written down that rule. Iris, I'm not done. Okay. I am not going to say, tonight, in the lavender, with your brother's men face down in the grass, that I love you, because I don't know yet if I love you or if I love the shape of a man I have been inventing in my head out of pieces of you. I don't know. I want to find out. I want to know for sure. And I think the only way I find out for sure is if we stop, Dominic. If we stop the thing we started with a contract and we start again with something that is not a contract. Because I want to know what you look like when you are not a man who thinks he owns me. He was looking up at her. Her hands were still holding his. His eyes were wet. Okay, he said. Okay? Okay. We stopped the contract. Just like that. Just like that. Iris, I was going to tell you. Tonight. After. I was going to tell you when we got home that I could not keep being a man who had your signature on a piece of paper in a drawer in my desk. I was going to burn it. I had decided. I was going to burn it tonight. Were you? Yes. How do I know? You don't. You have to decide whether you believe me. She looked at him for a long moment. I believe you. Iris. Yes. I love you. She had not expected him to say it. It was not romantic. It was not a thing he said beautifully. He said it the way a man says a thing he has been carrying in a closed hand for a long time, without rehearsing it, without grace. It came out of his mouth, and it was there between them in the lavender, and neither of them knew what to do with it for a second. Then she laughed, a small, broken, honest laugh. Dominic? Yes. You couldn't wait until we were inside. Apparently not. You picked now. I picked now. With your brother getting put in a car behind us and Matteo 15 feet away pretending he can't hear us, and Cyril somewhere in the lavender judging me for not ducking fast enough. Yes. Okay. Okay? Okay. I'm going to think about that. I'm going to sit with that. I'm not going to say anything back tonight because I don't say things like that back until I mean them all the way, and I don't quite mean it all the way yet. But I heard you, all right? I heard you. Come on, get up. Get up out of the lavender, Dominic. My knees hurt. He got up. He pulled her up with him. They stood there for a moment, both of them, in the overgrown garden of a house that had not been lived in for 12 years, and the moon was doing something extraordinary over the water. And somewhere up on the road, an engine started and went, and the garden smelled of old woman's perfume and the sea, and Iris understood, with a clarity that did not have any drama in it, that she had just survived the worst thing she had ever survived, and that she was probably going to survive a lot of other things in the years to come. Because the woman who had walked into that garden was not the woman who had signed a piece of paper in a study 32 days ago. That woman was gone. Somebody else was standing in her boots. Okay. They burned the contract 3 nights later, in the fireplace of the study where she had signed it. Dominic took it out of the drawer and showed it to her first. Both signatures, hers still a little careful at the edges, his sharp and fast. And then he laid it on the grate and he lit one corner with a match, and they stood together and watched it go. It did not take long. Paper never does. When it was done, he said very quietly, Iris? Yes. You don't owe me anything. I know. You can leave. I know. Tomorrow. Tonight. Whenever you want. A car will take you anywhere you'd like. My name comes off everything. The house goes back to being mine, and nothing you have touched in it follows you. That is the deal now. That is all the deal there is. She looked at him. She looked at the last curl of paper turning to ash on the grate. I'm going to stay, she said. Iris, not forever. I'm not saying forever. I don't know forever yet, Dominic, and you keep trying to get me to sign up for forever. And I keep telling you no because I'm 24, and I'm not going to sign forever to a man I have known for 5 weeks. I'm going to stay for now. I'm going to keep working at St. Agnes. I'm going to call my father and tell him more of the truth than I've been telling him. Not all of it. Some of it. I'm going to figure out which rooms in this house I like and which ones I don't. I'm going to keep going to Cyril's once a week because I'm not done learning what he is teaching me and because I like him and he makes me coffee. And I am going to find out, slowly, what you look like when nobody is making you pretend. And if, in 6 months, I still want to be here, I am still going to be here. And if I don't, I'm going to tell you, and you are going to let me go, and you are not going to punish yourself for it for the rest of your life. Those are the terms.
Those are good terms. They're my terms. Okay. Okay? Okay? She held out her hand to him. He took it. There was no kiss. There was no big music. There was a fire going out in a grate, and 2 people holding hands in a study in a house on a hill, and a woman who was starting, for the first time in her life, to pick the room she was going to walk into instead of being walked into them.
Months later, in the early spring, when the garden Iris had planted on the south side of the house was starting to do something with itself, and she had hired a woman named Rosa to help her with it, because she had discovered, to her own great surprise, that she liked planting things, but did not like kneeling for long stretches. There was a charity event. It was Dominic's idea, sort of. It had been his idea the way a thing is his idea, when his wife has said 6 different times over 6 different dinners that she thought his company should be doing more for children's services in the East End. And he had finally said, "All right, what do you want?" And she had said, "Everything. I want everything. Money, time, a building. Your name on the front door of the building in a size that makes certain men in this city angry about it. A board that I am on. Programs that are not named after your father. Not named after my father. Not named after your father. Iris, Dominic, I am going to say this to you one time, and then we are not going to talk about it again, because you and I both know I am right. Your father's name is not going on a building that feeds children. Your mother's is, or nothing's. Pick. My mother will hate it. Your mother will love it. She will complain for 6 weeks, and then she will love it, and she will stand on the steps at the dedication, and she will pretend to be embarrassed by her name in big letters, and she will have Theodora drive her back past the building every Sunday for the rest of her life. We both know it. Stop pretending. He had put his head in his hands at the dining room table. How are you this much work? You signed up for it. I absolutely did not. You did. Maybe not on paper, but you did. The event was held in a long white tent on the lawn of the house. Iris wore a green dress she had chosen herself. Not with a stylist, not with Beatrice's careful help, by herself. Standing in a boutique in the East End on a Saturday with a cup of coffee from a cafe she had worked down the block from in a former life. She stood at the front of the tent beside Dominic, and she shook the hand of a city councilwoman, and she greeted a principal from an elementary school in the East End, and she caught Sister Marian's eye across the room, and Sister Marian rolled her eyes at her, affectionately, which was the closest thing to a blessing Sister Marian gave anyone. Elena was there. Seated, wrapped in a shawl, holding court in the corner of the tent with 2 younger women who looked terrified of her, and one old man who was making her laugh. She had been, as Iris had predicted, furious for exactly 6 weeks about the building, and then she had gone down to the dedication in a dark blue dress and a gold pin, and she had stood on the steps, and she had said to a reporter, "My son has finally done something with his money that his mother is not embarrassed by." And the clip had gone around the city for a week. Her father was there, sitting at a table near the back, with a new jacket on and a haircut he had gotten that morning. He had cried when Iris had told him the truth, the real truth, the whole of it, the contract and the debt, and the first night in the study. About 3 months after the night in the lavender. He had cried on the phone for almost an hour, and she had let him. When he had finally calmed down, he had said, "Iris, I don't know how to live with what you did for me." And she had said, "Dad, you don't have to live with it. You just have to not do it again. You have to let me help you if something else comes up. You have to not go to a man at a club. You have to call me. That's all." And he had said, "Okay, baby, okay." They were not fixed, they were better. Victor was not there. Victor was in a place he was going to be in for a long time. A quiet kind of place, not not a prison. Something Dominic had arranged, something with locks on the doors and people who were paid to be patient. He was not being made an example of. He was not being used. Dominic visited him once a month. He did not tell Iris what they talked about. She did not ask. She understood by now that there were rooms in her husband's life that she was not going to be in, and that was all right, because there were rooms in her life he was not going to be in either, and that was how two grown people built a house. Late in the evening, after the speeches and the auction and the small plates of food that nobody had really eaten, she and Dominic stepped out of the tent together for a moment. They stood on the lawn with their shoulders almost touching, and they did not speak for a while. The house was lit up behind them. The tent was lit up beside them. Somewhere inside, a band was playing something that was not quite a song and not quite nothing. Iris. Yes. I wanted to tell you something. I have been thinking about the first night, the study, the contract. I've been thinking about it a lot this week. Why this week? Because it's almost a year. She was quiet. I know, she said. Yes. I've been thinking about it too. Yes. Dominic. Yes. Do you remember what I said to you that night, right before I signed? You said if I ever lied to you, in the house, about anything that mattered, you'd find a way to make me regret it. Yes. I remember. Have I been fair? Very fair. Have you lied to me? No. Okay. 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 I wanted to check. He laughed, a small, tired, happy laugh, and he took her hand, and they stood there on the lawn for a while. I love you, she said. She said it quietly. She said it without any preamble. She said it the way he had said it to her in the lavender, the way a person said a thing she had been carrying in a closed hand for a long time, and it came out of her mouth, and it was there between them. He did not answer right away. I heard you, he said finally, echoing her from the garden, and his voice was doing a thing she had not heard it do before. All right, I heard you. Good. I already knew. I know you knew. I wasn't going to push. I know you weren't. That's why I said it. A woman who had been walking home in the rain in a waitress uniform 11 months before had just told a man who had inherited his father's cruelty that she loved him, on the lawn of a charity event with her name on a building she had chosen the color of the bricks for, and the world had not, so far, ended. That was, Iris thought later, the thing she wanted people to know, if anybody ever asked her what she had learned from any of this. Not that love saved anybody. Love did not save anybody. People saved themselves, slowly, in the small choices they made in kitchens and gardens and the backs of cars, and then, if they were very lucky, they looked up one day and there was somebody standing next to them who had been making their own small choices, in their own kitchens, in their own back rooms for their own reasons, and the two sets of choices had ended up in the same place. That was the whole secret. That was all of it. You did the work of becoming somebody you could live inside of, and then you found out who else had done the work, and you built a house with them, and you agreed out loud that the house would not be locked against each other from the inside. She had been locked against herself for a long time. She wasn't anymore. The band inside the tent found the end of whatever song it had been pretending to play, and people clapped and somebody laughed too loud, and Elena's voice cut through the noise from somewhere near the middle of the tent, saying something cutting about a politician that made Theodora shush her and made her not be shushed. The lawn smelled like grass and lavender and the faintest thing of the sea, even though they were not near the sea, even though they would never be near the sea in this particular yard, because the sea was a long drive north, and a White House she and Dominic were going to visit in June, and a porch where an old woman was waiting with lemon cake and a pot of tea and a low man's laugh. Iris turned and she tugged once on Dominic's hand. Come on, she said. Your mother's about to start another fight with the mayor. I don't want to miss it. Iris? Yes. Thank you. For what? For staying. You keep thanking me for that. I'm going to keep thanking you for that, Iris, for a long time. Okay, she said. Okay, you can do that. Come on. She pulled him toward the tent. He went.